Hogwarts, forbidden son of the Black and White Lord. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Hearing what Draco said, Augustus felt very angry. It is really unreasonable for you to ask me for money when I do something for you, so he said viciously. Oh, my dear roommate, didn't you voluntarily hand over the fruits of your labor to me just now, and now you have regretted it again? Hearing Augustus's unfriendly tone, Draco instinctively wanted to retreat, but after looking at the gallon in the box, Draco suddenly felt that he had an inexplicable power, so he said boldly, Chief, at least I can't do it for nothing. You see, I have to inform the teachers and students of the school and host the exchange activities here. I still have to work hard. Give me some. Augustus thought for a while, nodded and said, then I'll give you 100 galleons, but you need to be quicker. We can't confirm how long it will take to complete the goal. Hearing that he had a salary, Draco seemed very happy and quickly assured Augustus that the exchange task would start tomorrow. The next day, the whole Slytherin exploded, and the little snakes rushed to tell everyone. In order to show competitiveness more directly, Augustus directly placed 12 galleons in the Slytherin common room, put it into a small mountain bag. Looking at Gingallen, who was 5 or 6 meters tall, the little snakes went crazy. No matter whether they were in the lower grades or the senior grades, they all took out their transfiguration notes and went to Draco to exchange them. But the result was very disappointing. I don't know if the quality of education at Hogwarts is biased. The quality of the notes of the Slytherin students is simply outrageous. The notes of more than 7 people in 100 grades were only exchanged for more than 500. Some knowledge points, on average, less than 5 points per person. This is not as fast as copying books. From the class notes of this Slytherin student, Augustus also discovered a problem. The education in the wizarding world still takes the personal way of being led by a master. It does not teach students to systematically summarize the learning methods of each subject, which is also the reason for the poor quality of students' notes. Reluctantly, Augustus had no choice but to ask the Slytherin students to inform the people in other colleges that, as long as they were notes or research materials from grades 2 of Transfiguration, they could be exchanged for money after the valuation. So after lunch, the whole of Hogwarts was boiling, especially after the Gryffindor twins saw the Golden Mountain in the Slytherin common room. They ran around telling each other, I know everything. Students kept coming to the Slytherin common room with their Transfiguration class notes. But for the same reason, the quality of the notes is really difficult to meet the standard. Only Ravenclaw students are slightly better. They generally make some notes on their own notes, so they are rated as high quality notes by conversion. How many people have been here? When it was almost dinner time, Augustus asked Draco helplessly. Draco flipped through the record book and replied, almost all 4 colleges have been here, but it seems that the situation is not very optimistic. The tallest is a Hufflepuff 4th year student named Cedric Diggory, which is really surprising. A total of that's 4 galleons in exchange. When Augustus heard Draco's report, he scratched his hair annoyed. He hadn't even completed a fraction of one. With a sigh, there was no better way, so I had to go with Draco to avoid going to dinner. Arriving at the Hogwarts auditorium, Daphne saw 2 people and hurried over with a bunch of notebooks, put the notebooks in front of Augustus and said, this is the transfiguration material I compiled. Although it is relatively simple, I still hope to help you, Augustus. Thank you, Daphne, and I'll make Draco pay you back in the common room. Augustus smiled, took the notebook from Daphne, and said, no need, it's not something valuable. I'll give it to you if you need it. Daphne quickly waved her hand and said, looking at the nervous and lacking self-confidence little girl in front of him, Augustus felt real warmth. So Augustus gently hugged Daphne and then said softly, thank you very much. After speaking, he took Daphne, who was at a loss, to the long table of Slytherin for dinner. Hermione was eating at the long table in Gryffindor. Seeing this scene, she had no choice but to stuff back the class notes she was about to take out, lowered her head and crazily used the fork in her hand to fork the steak in front of her, watching Harry's eyelids twitch wildly. As time passed, this exchange's turmoil intensified in Hogwarts, and even many senior students began to relearn the courses on transfiguration from the 1st to 3rd grades, hoping to summarize some useful knowledge. After all, it was often said that knowledge is money in the past, but it was just talk, but now knowledge is really money, shiny gold galleon. However, half a month has passed, and nothing has been achieved. However, Professor McGonagall seemed very happy. Because of this event, the entire Hogwarts was full of enthusiasm for learning transfiguration. So Professor McGonagall also provided Augustus with the transfiguration materials he had compiled for the 1st to 3rd grades. This is also the largest exchange item so far, a total of 5,000 gold galleons. Professor McGonagall used the money to replace all members of the Gryffindor Quidditch team with new brooms. Professor Flitwick of Ravenclaw College couldn't help but put his transfiguration the notes are exchanged. But after all, he is not a professional transfiguration professor, and he only exchanged 2,500 galleons. But Professor Flitwick seemed very happy. With this money, he can also exchange a few for the Ravenclaw Quidditch team. Bring a new broom. Seeing the deans of the other two colleges, they all exchanged a lot of money. Dean Slytherin, our Professor Snape, of course, was not willing to be left behind. After 2 weeks of hard work, he took the money with confidence. Take your own notebook and come to the common room of your college. In front of everyone, he put the notebook on top of the converter, but the converter showed that the item had nothing to do with the relevant subjects and would not be graded. Looking at the huge 0 on the display screen, the entire Slytherin common room was completely silent. If Augustus hadn't held Professor Snape firmly, the converter would have been blocked by Professor Snape long ago. Cut it into pieces with Shen Feng Wuang. The one with the most stamina was probably Ron Weasley. He spent more than half a month hand copied more than 2,000 sheets of parchment teaching materials on transfiguration, and exchanged 10 gold galleons from Draco. Looking at the slow progress on the progress bar, Augustus was about to cry. He never expected that even the professor joined in, and he only exchanged more than 1 knowledge points. The goal is still far away. Just when Augustus was melancholy, a familiar voice came. Can I exchange it now? It took me more than half a month to sort it out. It should be able to exchange for 1,000 gold galleons. Hermione walked in with 3 notebooks as she spoke, and Augustus nodded. He really didn't have the energy to have any fantasies about the notes made by these students now. Seeing Augustus' reaction, Hermione snorted and placed the notebook on top of the converter herself. Augustus also glanced at it, and then couldn't take his eyes away anymore, because he clearly saw the number displayed on the converter, which was a full 10. Chapter 52 Making Requests. Augustus rubbed his eyes. It was unbelievable. He never expected that a student could sort out materials better than the professor. Seeing these numbers, Hermione opened her mouth wide in surprise. She just wanted to prove to Augustus today that she was the best, but she never expected that this level of power was beyond expectations. 10 galleons. What a huge amount of wealth. After looking at the mountain of gold still piled up in the Slytherin common room, most of it will soon become his own property. The other students gathered around to watch the excitement. All of them stared wide-eyed, and the boss opened his mouth so much that he could just stuff an egg directly. Many people's first reaction is that the machine is broken, but after thinking about it, it is wrong. Augustus claimed that his machine can judge the quality of learning materials. After so many days of evaluation, everyone basically agreed with the judgment results of this machine. After all, some students who were unconvinced and thought their scores were low had gone to Professor McGonagall to check their information, but Professor McGonagall, the answers given are all judged by machines very accurately. When everyone was still in a daze, Augustus urgently contacted the system. What's going on here? Could it be that the converter is broken? How can a first year student compile more information than a professor? Please don't doubt the accuracy of the things given by the system. If the host doesn't believe it, he can check it himself. The system replied coldly. Returning to reality from his mind, Augustus immediately came to Hermione from behind the seat and said softly to Hermione, "Can you show me your notebook? After all, this incident is too shocking." Hearing this, Hermione nodded and handed over the notebook in her hand. Augustus immediately took the notebook and flipped through it non-stop. After reading half of the notebook, Augustus immediately discovered the key point. Most of the students at Hogwarts are actually from pure blood and mixed blood families. Most of them have learned about magic and its existence since childhood, so they have avoided the education they received since childhood. The logic that Muggles value education and knowledge system education. This means that even a top professor like Professor McGonagall lacks the logical thinking ability and organizing and analyzing ability like ordinary people. Therefore, most of their notes are just some self-understanding and analysis of self skills, which are all linear, and there is no divergent or systematic summary. However, because Hermione has been an elite student among Muggles since she was a child, her long-term elitist education has given her a strong logical thinking ability and ability to organize and summarize. Hermione recorded in detail in her 3 notebooks the summary materials of Transfiguration that she compiled through the Hogwarts library and almost all books that record Transfiguration, which contain detailed systematic summaries, logical comparisons, and divergent contrast. Augustin raised his head from his notebook, and seeing the brown hairy ball in front of him, Augustin couldn't help sighing in his heart. Is this the strongest student at Hogwarts? It's really terrifying. Augustus rolled his eyes, then pretended to be pitiful, and said to Hermione, "Hermione, we are friends, right? You see, I have worked so hard to collect these materials in order to complete the task assigned by Professor McGonagall. I'm also doing it for the honor of Hogwarts as a whole. You see, I've lost so much money. You don't want me to spend all my money. I'm so pitiful." After speaking, he wiped his eyes pretendingly. Hermione looked at Augustus' pitiful look and couldn't help but feel weak. After all, she just wanted to get angry with herself and wanted to prove that she was the most powerful of these young students. 3 notebooks were exchanged for 10 galleons. Hermione's childhood education didn't seem to allow her to do so, and Augustus was right. He was also doing it for the glory of Hogwarts. So she thought about it, said Hermione. "Okay then, for your face to be so knowledgeable, then I will." Before Hermione finished speaking, Daphne rushed in, pulled Hermione away, and snatched the notebook, and said to Hermione, "Silly girl, you were almost cheated again. Do you know that there is only such little money? Draco has already told me that there are at least 5 or 6 million galleons in Augustus' vault." It turned out that when Hermione's test results came out, there were many students who watched the excitement and were not afraid of big things and went out to spread the word. After Daphne heard the news, she immediately rushed to the Slytherin common room. 10 galleons is a lot of money. Even though she came from a noble family, she has never seen so much money. And this money will be obtained by her best friend Hermione immediately, and her best friend's money is her own money, and no one is allowed to touch it. Hearing this, Hermione was shocked, and then stared at Augustus. Her eyes were full of the expression that "you lied to me." Augustus looked furious, and immediately turned to look at Draco. Unexpectedly, the person he trusted the most turned out to be a traitor. Draco immediately greeted the members of the study club, and began to move the study materials obtained in the past few days to his dormitory, and then said to Augustus with a smile, "Chief, keep busy. The study materials worth 10 will be moved to your own dormitory yourself. We will move these odds for you first. Don't worry about me, you can continue." After finishing speaking, he led the members of the study meeting, looked at the pile of study materials, and rushed to his dormitory, and kept complaining about Ron in his heart. "An idiot is an idiot. I copied more than 2,000 pages of books, which is not as much as 3 notebooks." Seeing Draco run away, Augustus didn't bother anymore. After all, he had more important things to do. He looked at the 2 girls in front of him who were holding the notebook tightly to their chests. Augustus sighed deeply. It seemed that he was about to use his trick. He tidied up his clothes and hair. After all, he was still very confident in his appearance. Augustus stepped forward, grabbed Hermione's little hand, then put his face close to the other's cheek, stared at Miss Beaver in front of him with his different colored eyes, and said affectionately, Money is like dirt to me, but your actions deeply hurt my heart. Aren't we friends? You still owe me a request on the train, and now I'm going to say my request. I want yours notebook. Looking at the handsome face that kept approaching her, Hermione felt that her breathing became difficult. When Augustus said she wanted to say her request, Hermione felt that her mind was blank. When she heard the words "I want you," Hermione had already closed her eyes, but the following words made her very angry again. Daphne pushed Augustus away and shouted loudly, "You are really unreasonable. Stay away from my best friend." Hermione looked disgusted and then said forcefully, "I don't recognize this request. How can a man make such a request to a woman? I don't care. You keep this request for yourself. You can think of other ways to convince us." Chapter 53 The Conditions of Being Forced to Agree, and the Hidden Crisis. Augustus, who was pushed away forcibly, looked confused. After all, in the idle dramas he watched in his previous life, didn't those handsome male protagonists always do this to the female protagonists? Didn't the heroines all blushed and shyly agree? How come they can't do it here? Augustus touched his face with a little confidence. Isn't he not handsome enough? Daphne and Hermione were very angry. They never expected that the man in front of them would make such an unreasonable request, and a lady's promise was only in exchange for 3 notebooks. Is this what a man should ask of a woman? A beast is simply inferior to a beast. This boy is simply a monster. Augustus was a little embarrassed watching the scene, sighed and looked at the golden mountain behind him, and then said to Hermione, "Well, I can pay for it if you want. It's still important to me after all. I'm not selling it." Hermione yelled angrily. Hermione felt very aggrieved in her heart. She never thought that her value in Augustus' heart could not compare to the 3 notebooks in her hand. It was simply unreasonable to use her promise on this. Seeing that Hermione was about to cry, Daphne had no choice but to comfort Hermione, and felt a little regretful in her heart. If she hadn't intervened, maybe this incident would not have happened, but she looked at the scene behind Augustus. Gentian. Daphne's heart was shaken again. After all, Jinjialong is really fragrant. Looking at the 2 wronged girls in front of him, Augustus felt a very headache. Although he didn't know where he was wrong, it was obvious that the initiative was in their hands now. Okay, it's my fault, isn't it okay? How can you give me those 3 notebooks? Augustus said helplessly. Hearing this, Hermione rolled her eyes, discussed with Daphne for a while, and then said seriously, "First of all, 10 galleons, not 1 less. Secondly, because of your rude behavior just now, I want to cancel the promise I made to you. And the ownership of this promise needs to be changed, so that you must make a promise to me that can be fulfilled at any time. Finally, when you have thoroughly researched all the research materials and released the summary paper, I will become the second author of this paper and indicate that the pending research is completed under the cooperation of Ms. Hermione Granger. And these 3 conditions must all be agreed, otherwise I will burn these 3 notebooks, and I will not give them to you." After speaking, Hermione and Daphne put on a vicious look, as if you don't agree with us, we will die. Hearing these 3 conditions, Augustus's face couldn't help twitching. If you want to make money, you have to kill, and if you kill someone, you have to kill your heart. It's you who are ruthless. But after thinking about it, the quality of the notes of other Hogwarts students, by the time they have researched results, I may have been repeated here for 7 or 8 years. So he took a deep breath and said with difficulty, "Okay, ladies, you have won. I agree to all 3 conditions. Now you can hand over the notebook to me." Hearing what Augustus said, Hermione and Daphne were also taken aback for a moment. Originally, the 2 proposed such harsh conditions, and they didn't expect Augustus to agree to them all. But he still quickly put on an expression that your kid is taking advantage, and handed the notebook to Augustus with disdain. After getting the notebook, Augustus cast a spell and put a full 10 galleons into a magic bag. Seeing that there was only 1 galleon left on the ground, Augustus' eyelids twitched wildly. After all, you need to pay wages to hire people to work and move things. The most abominable thing is Professor Snape, an old bat, because his notebooks have no selling price, so Augustus needs to pay rent for occupying the common room. Abruptly defrauded 3,000 gold galleons. The two little lalas who got the money back seemed very excited and kept discussing what to buy with the money. Hermione wanted to buy all the books in Lehon bookstore, and Daphne wanted to buy beautiful clothes and the latest cosmetics. Augustus was not in the mood to look at these two black-bellied little girls anymore, bent down to pick up the last gallon on the ground, and walked to his bedroom. After all, there were more important things to do, and that was to punish traitor. At this time, Professor McGonagall had been standing at the door of the Hogwarts infirmary for a long time. She had been waiting for someone, and when she saw a familiar figure in a turban walking towards her, Professor McGonagall immediately went up to block it. The way forward. Professor Quirrell, I heard from Mrs. Pangley that you have been going out privately recently and have not received treatment. How can you recover and resume teaching like this? Professor McGonagall asked seriously. As the vice principal of Hogwarts who is actually in charge of all affairs, Professor McGonagall is very dissatisfied with Professor Quirrell's behavior. I have only been in class for less than a week, and I still run around every day without receiving treatment. Today I must ask for an explanation. If I want to get paid for nothing and not work, there is no way. I'm going out there to find a doctor who treats mental issues. You know, my mental health has been severely challenged. Professor Quirrell replied hesitantly, looking very pitiful. Then you shouldn't run around. If necessary, you can apply to the college. Hogwarts will hire the best Dr. St. Mungo to treat you. And I think Madame Pomfrey's level is enough to treat all your problems. Professor McGonagall continued to say seriously that she did not believe that Professor Quirrell's injury could not be cured at Mrs. Pangley's level. After all, Professor Quirrell was an adult, and how much psychological trauma an adult could have. This. Professor Quirrell hesitated for a long time and couldn't answer. He really couldn't directly refute what Professor McGonagall said. After all, the level of the Hogwarts infirmary is well known in the wizarding world. I don't think there is a need for Professor McGonagall to be like this. Anyone who encounters such a situation will inevitably have psychological problems. It is really inappropriate to teach such an important subject as defense against the dark arts to a person with psychological defects. If it is due to financial considerations, I don't need the salary of the professor of defense against the dark arts. After all, it is what we should do to contribute to the school. Professor Snape flashed out from the shadows and said loudly to Professor McGonagall. Professor Quirrell couldn't help but heaved a sigh of relief when he heard the words, and he felt a touch of emotion in his heart. Voldemort on the back of his head also sighed secretly in his heart. What is loyalty, and what is the pillar of the team? Looking at Severus' performance, he must have sensed my aura and came here to rescue himself. He is really a good and loyal comrade. Of course, Professor Snape didn't know about Voldemort's psychological activities. He came here this time only to keep his position as a defense against the dark arts professor. After all, he had applied for this position for more than 10 years, and it took half a month after all. Want to take it away? No way. After hearing what Professor Snape said, Professor McGonagall couldn't say anything more. After seeing his resolute expression, nodded in agreement, and left the infirmary with Professor Snape. Watching the two leave, Voldemort said hastily, "Our plan must continue to advance. Now that Snape is in the way, we must speed up the progress. After all, we still need a certain amount of time to understand the strangeness of that brat." "Yes, my lord, I understand." Professor Quirrell replied silently, turned and walked into the infirmary. Chapter 54 A Quiet Life with Some Twists. After this exchange of learning materials for galleons, Hogwarts, which has been bustling since the beginning of school, has finally temporarily entered into a period of peace. Of course, there are also some small waves revealed in the calm. For example, in order to punish Draco for his treachery, Augustus made him shut up in the flame cage for 24 hours, and he had to choose between forcing him to dress up as a woman for a month. Draco looked at the flame cage rising from the dormitory, still speaking calmly and silently. "Even if I would be scalded to death in the dormitory, I would never choose women's clothing. After all, the glory of the Malfoy family cannot be tarnished." But when he was caged in flames, and only got burned once, he immediately told Augustus that it was not impossible for him to dress up as a woman. After all, he also wanted to see which one was more beautiful, himself or Harry. so Draco easily persuaded himself to put on women's clothes. After all, women's clothes are only embarrassing, and staying in that ghost thing for a whole day may kill you. And so Mr. Draco, the chief first-year assistant to Slytherin, vice president and de facto executive officer of the study council, disappeared. It was replaced by Miss Malfoy with long shiny platinum hair, delicate facial features and a slightly thin body, looking very charming. Snape was very angry about this. Originally Harry could tolerate women's clothing. After all, Lily is the most beautiful, but when his godson also started to wear women's clothing for no reason, Snape became angry. He wrote 4 or 5 letters to Lucius in a row, accusing Draco of committing crimes in school, hooking up with male students from other colleges, and being a little psychopathic. Lucius was also very face-saving, and wrote 4 roaring letters in a row, demanding that Draco immediately stop such behaviors that insulted the family's honor, otherwise he would look good on him when he returned home for Christmas. Draco turned a deaf ear to these letters. After all, if he dies now, or 2 months later, Draco can still figure it out. Besides, we have survived so many big scenes, and the threat from his father has become insignificant now. Harry was very enthusiastic about this. Every potions class and defense against the dark arts class, Miss Harry and Miss Malfoy would always sit together and discuss some personal issues enthusiastically. This made Ron feel very dissatisfied. Although Malfoy is very cute in women's clothing, but that broken mouth will spray poison when they meet, and she will be crazily ridiculed every time they meet. Now this bad guy has hooked up with his best friend, so Harry is not willing to play with him now. Professor Quirrell has always explained the profound things in simple terms, and few people now remember that he has a defense against the dark arts professor. Occasionally, someone saw him, and he walked out of the infirmary inexplicably to the outside of Hogwarts. When others asked, Professor Quirrell said that his mental state was still severely challenged. He met a good psychologist outside and needed regular treatment. Mrs. Pangley kept complaining to Professor McGonagall, saying that Professor Quirrell did not have very serious psychological problems at all, and even if he had, he should be able to cure it. His behavior was an insult to her. Professor McGonagall has talked to Professor Quirrell many times, asking him to receive treatment at Hogwarts, and not allowing him to run around. But every conversation will be forcibly interrupted by Professor Snape, who can teach you defense against the dark arts for free, and your level of defense against the dark arts is obviously higher than that of Professor Quirrell. And there have been no accidents in my own class. Of course, this is not because Professor Snape changed his teaching style, but because he got the formula of red potion, HP potion, from Augustus. He began to boil a large amount of red syrup and forcibly poured it on the students who were unconscious, fractured and injured in class, so as to ensure that everyone would not have any scars on their bodies after class. Almost all the senior students were very excited every time they saw Professor McGonagall talking with Professor Quirrell. After all, Professor Snape's teaching method was really unbearable. Stunning spells and disarming spells can still be tolerated, but it's unacceptable for people to use them directly to shatter their bodies to pieces. But Professor Snape has a way, no matter whether you have a broken bone or a coma, take a medicine pourer and pour a bottle of red syrup, so that you will be alive and well after class. Every conversation was forcibly interrupted by Professor Snape, which made the senior students heartbroken, and the nickname of Vampire Bad resounded throughout Hogwarts. Augustus's daily life was very peaceful, except for regular chats with the old bee every week. Nothing major happened. Because of Augustus, most of the professors applied for a class exemption discount on the grounds that they needed to sort out the transfiguration materials, and that they had mastered all the first year courses except transfiguration. Augustus was able to conduct his own elemental magic and alchemy research in his secret laboratory, watching the heavy firearms all over the walls being transformed into alchemy weapons. Augustus had an inexplicable sense of security in his heart. Sure enough, the source of all fear came from lack of firepower. No matter how powerful the Dark Lord is, he is just a human being. My blue-fired Gatling machine gun, teach me what are you really pouring out on fire? Of course, Augustus did not dare to be sloppy about the most important thing, the 1st to 3rd grade transfiguration learning materials compiled by the knowledge converter. It soon appeared on Professor McGonagall's desk. Looking at the 3 new study summaries, Professor McGonagall seemed very happy, especially on the first page, where the instructor's line read, "Miller Professor Wa McGonagall has made an indelible and outstanding contribution to this." Of course, Miss Beaver's emotions should also be taken into account, so immediately in the next line of the instructor, it is written that this book is completed with the assistance of Miss Hermione Granger's outstanding contribution. Augustus, the author who spent large sums of money, was relegated to the last line of the written cover. On the same day, Professor McGonagall immediately submitted these 3 books to the most authoritative deformation magazine Daily Transformation, and received confirmation from the magazine that night. Augustus and Hermione jointly won the Best Newcomer of the Year prize. A few days later, the Ministry of Magic also sent a letter stating that Augustus's second-class mail-in medal was officially confirmed to be awarded, and the time was set for the second Sunday of the summer vacation. Moreover, Hermione was also awarded a third-class mail-in medal for her outstanding performance in Transfiguration, and the awards were presented at the same time. Professor McGonagall was very satisfied with the results, and guaranteed that Augustus would be promoted to the 2nd grade with a full score in Transfiguration. Hermione was very surprised when she heard the news, and then looked very happy. She didn't expect that her notes could bring such a great achievement, which made her very confident. Augustus, on the other hand, looked indifferent. He was successfully promoted to the 2nd grade, and the top priority was not to be repeated. During this period, Augustus also visited Hagrid, but he didn't see the dragon egg that appeared in the plot, but he negotiated a good deal with Hagrid. After all, as a ranger of the Forbidden Forest, Hagrid still had a lot of magical animal materials in his hands. Augustus assured him that as long as Hagrid collected these materials, he would get of the money, and Augustus can find a way to get some uncommon magical animals for Hagrid during the holidays, such as the dragon and thunderbird. Hearing that, Hagrid readily agreed. Before Augustus left, Hagrid also sent some rock cakes to Augustus, and Augustus looked at the rock cakes in his hand, which claimed to be the strongest defense force of Hogwarts, and did not refuse. "Anyway, it can be used as a shield when I go back." The peaceful life continued like this, with a little turmoil, but overall it was fine. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55: Comprehensive Layout and Expansion. In the past few days, several good things have made Augustus feel better. The first is the Quidditch sports reform co-hosted by myself and Lucius, which was finally tried out on professional teams in England. It is said that the game that night was intense and exciting. The 90-minute game was more compact and full of confrontation than the previous 3 to 4 hour game. Both Lucius and Augustus gained at least 1 galleons in a single game. For this reason, Lucius wrote a letter to explain the huge development potential of the project to Augustus. He also stated that more pureblood families wanted to join this investment, and at the end of the letter, he solemnly invited Augustus to visit the manor for Christmas. On the desk in his dormitory, Augustus wrote a reply letter to Lucius himself in traditional cursive script. After all, the other party can be regarded as half of his partner now, so he wrote a reply letter to show respect. Put the letter paper into the envelope, and finally sprinkle it with wax, mixed with gold powder, and finally stamp your own seal. Augustus specially designed a badge for himself. The main body of the badge is composed of 2 parts. The upper part is a soaring phoenix, and the lower part is a triangle with a circle in the middle and a straight line running through it. It is the symbol of the very famous Deathly Hallows in the magic world. Originally, the phoenix was located under the Deathly Hallows logo, but when he explained to Dumbledore that he wanted to set up a personal badge, Dumbledore saw his first draft of the design and disagreed with Life and Death. When asked why, he hesitated and refused to explain clearly, but in the end he made a very strange request. That is, the phoenix must be on top of the Deathly Hallows. Augustus was really puzzled by this nonsensical request, but after thinking about it, he agreed. After all, he still had to rely on Dumbledore's high prestige in the magic world. With his endorsement, he would be able to do things in the magic world much simpler. After sealing the envelope, Augustus called out his own phoenix, and with the condition of 10 golden galleon snacks, he let his arrogant phoenix act as an owl. After all, pure blood families are not as stupid as they appear on the surface. Without enough deterrent force, they will definitely not get more benefits in negotiations. Let the phoenix deliver the letter to let them understand that they are not representing individuals, but the Dumbledore family. This new family, which became famous because of Albus Dumbledore, will not be cut off, and the new blood is still continuing the glory of the family. After dealing with the affairs of the pure blood family, Augustus sent out the bill of the potion shop opened by himself and Professor Snape in Diagon Alley. After careful comparison and verification, signed and sent it with an owl. After all, neither I nor Professor Snape can directly manage the operation of the potion shop, so it is still very necessary to check the accounts once a month. Professor Snape was working on potions right now, because Augustus was visiting him this weekend, in order to pull him out of Eden's dream potion dependence. He handed him the list of potions needed for the resurrection potion. When Professor Snape got the list, his hands, who had always been calm and composed, began to tremble uncontrollably. "Are you sure this potion can bring the dead back from the world of the undead?" asked Professor Snape tremblingly. "Of course, I won't make such silly jokes. Although I can't brew this potion yet, I think we can make some preparations first," Augustus said calmly. "Okay, Professor, now you can no longer immerse yourself in that illusory dream. Get ready, maybe we can bring the dream into reality." Hearing this, Professor Snape nodded, then carefully looked at the list in his hand, and immediately searched in his medicine storage room. Soon, large and small bottles filled the table. Seeing that there were at least bottles in front of him, which meant that nearly half of the materials in the list he gave him, Professor Snape had already prepared them in advance up. "Don't be surprised, although I can't obtain such a detailed and operable potion formula like you through some means that I can't understand. I still found some fragmented formulas through research on ancient books and potions. After all, the purpose is the same, and there must be similarities in materials." Speaking of this, Professor Snape directly began to lower his head to sort out the medicinal materials. After all, these materials have been stored for a long time, and some unknown problems may arise. For Professor Snape, this time, no problems are absolutely allowed. "When did you start collecting these materials?" "In the past 11 years, all you have found are broken and incomplete formulas. These materials are all priceless. If I didn't give you the formula, would you continue to search for it?" Looking at the busy middle-aged man in front of him, Augustus couldn't help asking. "Always, until forever." Professor Snape raised his head, stared at the mysterious and powerful boy in front of him, and said calmly. Hearing this, Augustus walked out of Professor Snape's potion storage room, because he knew that this potion might really be successful. For thousands of years, magicians have been trying to resurrect the dead. But the difficulty is never the ratio of the potion or the sophistication of the magic. The difficulty is always calling back the soul of the dead from another world, because no matter how strong the relationship is, it will become dim as time goes by. Although I still have the guarantee that Harry is my own son, I still can't be sure whether Harry, who has no memory of his mother, can burst out with strong emotions enough to bring the dead back from the world of the undead. Thinking about it now is really superfluous. The last thing that can be called a good thing is that the two little girls, Hermione and Daphne, returned the 10 galleons I gave them almost intact. In fact, this was also expected by Augustus. At the beginning, the two little girls were just immersed in the huge harvest, and they didn't realize what a huge fortune this was. After the two spent a crazy amount of money, they only spent less than 1,000 galleons. Only then did the two little girls realize what a huge sum it was. After all, 10 galleons is equivalent to 5,000 million pounds. In 1991, they had 5,000 million pounds in their hands. If they did not invest, they would not be able to spend so much money. After the two realized the seriousness of the matter, they also felt unspeakable guilt in their hearts. Good family education made them unable to continue go down. So he found Augustus this morning, and returned the remaining galleons. Augustus did not accept the money, but directly used the money to set up the mutual aid scholarship fund of the study club and the names of the two of them. It is used to reward students who have outstanding performance and excellent grades in the learning process. After all, one of these two is the eldest lady of a pure-blood family, and the other is a top student who runs a muggle family. The two of them still have a very important position in Augustus's future plan. After all, the reform needs to contact various forces, and it is very necessary to win a certain reputation for them. During the communication, Augustus still saw something he didn't want to see, and Hermione was still holding a book about alchemy. Obviously Dumbledore still doesn't want to give up the so-called savior plan. He still wants to succumb to that sad fate. It seems that Professor McGonagall has to look for Professor Quirrell every week, which is also the forced arrangement of the headmaster. Augustus did not forcibly interfere with this matter, but just mentioned to Hermione that your talent should not be wasted on those useless things, so he turned and left. After all, he had more important things to do. Chapter 56 The Halloween Banquet and the Deviating Fate. Time flies, and soon it will be the eve of Halloween. Halloween is a very important festival in the West. It is the same for Muggles, and it is also the same for Wizards. At least on the matter of celebrating the festival, the two parties have reached a rare consensus. At Hogwarts, every year on the eve of Halloween, the school holds a Halloween party. Waking up in the morning, the little wizards of Hogwarts smell the sweet and tempting smell of roasted pumpkin in the corridor. After all, pumpkins are indispensable at Halloween. The little wizards began to look forward to the Halloween party at night, and they didn't even have much thought about going to class. The teachers obviously know this too, and they no longer teach any formal content today, but play some small games in class to pass the time. Of course, except for Professor Snape's courses, he also specially brewed a powerful red potion to ensure that no matter who you are, or how injured you are, a bottle of potion will ensure that you can participate in the evening party alive and well. This caring service moved many senior students to tears. After the afternoon class, Augustus came to the auditorium, but he saw Professor Quirrell and Professor Flitwick decorating the auditorium. Looking at the busy figures, Augustus couldn't help but fell into deep contemplation. During the past 2 months of observation, I found more and more that the plot has not developed according to the original routine. Professor Quirrell obviously did not set up any sudden attack by giant monsters today. Professor Quirrell has been leaving Hogwarts frequently recently, and he seems to be planning something outside. However, when he asked Dumbledore, the old bee, he told himself that he didn't know what happened, but he always knew that he was still secretly. What are you planning? Could you come over and help, Mr. Augustus? Professor Flitwick said with a smile. Hearing someone calling him, Augustus pulled himself out of his thoughts, nodded in response to Professor Flitwick's request, and then waved his wand. All the pumpkins were floating in the air, showing terrifying expressions, as if they had been carved by invisible knives, and the faint blue flames emitted from the holes, making them look even darker and weirder. Looking at the flaming pumpkin head floating in the sky, Augustus nodded and continued to wave the wand in his hand. The lights in the entire auditorium were all turned into a strange green. Black vines began to spread around, and then blood red and strange roses bloomed. Ghosts turned into flames floated in the air, turning the entire auditorium into a medieval horror castle. Wonderful magic, you are really a genius. Seeing the changes around him, Professor Flitwick was so excited, he applauded desperately and said happily. Professor Quirrell next to him, with a strange face but nodded slightly, followed Professor Flitwick, and applauded for Augustus. Augustus gave a slight salute to the two professors, then walked to the long Slytherin table and sat down, waiting for the start of the Halloween party at night. Wow. This year's auditorium layout is too innovative. Look at those floating flaming pumpkin heads. No, I think those flame ghosts are the most handsome. What? Look at the surrounding vines, and the blood red roses, how artistic it is. As night fell, the little wizards from the 4 colleges also came to the auditorium one after another. Looking at the surrounding environment, they all let out various exclamations. The boys cared about the flame ghosts, and the girls liked the blood red roses more. Followed by the students were the professors, who also expressed their shock at this year's auditorium layout, and expressed their appreciation to Augustus under Professor Flitwick's explanation. Of course, Professor Snape, the crazy professor who added points, would not let go of this God-given opportunity, directly declaring loudly that, because of Augustus' behavior, Slytherin College would get 20 points. As Dumbledore was the last one to come to the auditorium, the Halloween banquet officially began. Dumbledore specially changed into a violet starry sky robe today, and his beard was also specially groomed. With Dumbledore's announcement, the banquet officially began, and all kinds of delicacies appeared on the blank table in an instant, and the students began to feast on it without hesitation. The atmosphere in the auditorium was very warm, and almost everyone laughed happily. After all, today was their first holiday at Hogwarts, and everyone seemed very happy. The principal on the professor's seat was toasting to all the professors separately. Even Professor Snape specially changed into a green robe today, with gorgeous silver piping, and his new image, which had been changed, looked very handsome. Augustus looked very indifferent. Looking at Professor Quirrell, who was mingling with the professors at the teacher's seat, Augustus had already deeply understood that his appearance had completely changed the fate of the entire world. With the last dessert, the banquet officially ended, and the students followed their prefects back to their respective colleges. But Augustus didn't follow everyone back to Slytherin. He came to the headmaster's office. The headmaster's room was brightly lit, and the portraits also sang and danced together to celebrate the festival. When they saw Augustus coming in, they greeted Augustus one after another and wished him a happy holiday. Dumbledore saw Augustus coming in and didn't speak, but smiled at him. Augustus walked directly to the French windows at the front of the principal's office, looking at the Hogwarts castle standing in the night. His thoughts drifted into the distance. Seeing Augustus coming, the portraits also left one after another, leaving enough space for the grandparents and grandchildren in front of them. The whole principal's office seemed extremely quiet, except for the crackling sound of the firewood in the brazier burning. I thought you were going to find your two little girlfriends. After all, today is a holiday, Dumbledore said to Augustus. Come on, they are only 11 years old. What kind of girlfriend should stop making such silly and nasty jokes? Augustus said coldly, his eyes still looking at the night outside the window. Do you still want to stick to your fate? By now you should find that your fate has been deflected. Do you have to stick to it? If you want to stick to it, should you also get rid of my uneasy factor? Augustus continued. When did you find out? I thought I hid it well. It seems that I'm really old. Dumbledore said helplessly. No, you hide very well. You almost fool everyone around you. Your acting skills are superb, but what you can never fool is your heart. I've always felt a sense of desolation and loneliness from you. It's as silent as a pool of stagnant water outside the window. You don't seem to fully believe what I said to you. You still believe that fate has given you your guide. You want to train Harry Potter to be the savior, right, father? Augustus still looked out the window and said coldly without emotion. He was really a little tired of not having anyone around him who could completely trust him. Everyone looked at him with more fear than trust. Even the man who claimed to be his father looked at him with a deep feeling in his eyes. Fear. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that your fate will be changed, that you will become a monster, or that Harry Potter will not be the real savior? Savior, what a ridiculous title. If you tell Harry that the price of being a savior is to see people who love you around him leave him forever, see if he is willing to be this savior. I said that I want to change this magical world. I don't like it's conservative, decadent, and inflexible. I want to change the fate of everyone, including yours of course. Augustus said, continuing to look out the window into the night. When I came to this world, I opened my eyes and found myself in an unknown abandoned factory building. I thought I was just an abandoned wretch. But I soon discovered that I was different from others. I seemed to be a mutant with mysterious powers in my heart. I thought it was just that God pitied me for being too pitiful in my previous life and gave me another chance. Then a year later, the white-bearded old man found you. You said you were his son, and you told yourself that you came to the world of Harry Potter. After entering the magic world, I gradually returned from the original excitement to mediocrity, especially under the encouragement of that fat man. I released the strongest magic I had, and the strong sense of power control made Augustus feel subtle the change. He wanted to change the wizarding world, the sad fate of those he had known, especially this poor old man who called himself his father. I disguised myself as a good student, that is, a good student, and cared for the school every day to solve various problems and add points to my college. It can be said that I did my best and worked hard. But soon I found that my father didn't seem to want things to deviate from the track he had mastered, and he still used various means to guide Harry Potter to the fate he had set. To put it bluntly, he doesn't believe that he can change all of this. He still wants to contribute the last bit of his life to what he thinks is an inevitable destiny. So Augustus was angry. Didn't he agree to accompany him to grow up? Didn't he agree to believe that he is the greatest miracle, so why should he succumb to fate? I'm sorry, but you still can't believe in the greatness of fate. I have fought against my child, but I have lost too many: friendship, family, and even love. I still can't believe it. I believe that I can change my destiny. After a long silence, Dumbledore said to Augustus with difficulty, his tone full of vicissitudes and sadness. Then don't believe it. Don't participate in that bullshit fate. Just watch. How about being a spectator, watching what you once said yourself? I'm the greatest magical miracle, watching whether this magical miracle can defeat fate. See if this is magic blooming above fate, or fate has driven magic into the soil. So just be a spectator. After speaking, Augustus walked towards the door of the principal's office, and suddenly found snowflakes outside the window from the corner of his eye. Augustus stopped and performed a magic trick, and the snowflakes outside the window drifted into the room through the gap of the window, turning into a shining sphere. This is my Halloween gift to you. Happy Halloween, Dad. This is the magic I created after imitating Hogwarts. As long as you input magic power into it, it will turn into the thing you most want to see, said Augustus. Directly left the principal's office. Dumbledore looked at this shiny sphere made of snowflakes, and with a tap of his wand, the snowflakes immediately began to change. In the end, it turned into a magnificent midsummer scene. In the picture made of snowflakes, two handsome teenagers were lying there on the midsummer lawn, their hands clasped tightly together. Will he really change the whole world as you said? Gellert. Looking at the picture in front of him, Dumbledore said slowly, and in the end he could only stare at the picture and fall into deep thought. Chapter 57 VOLDEMORT and -039. New plan is in preparation. London, Knockturn Alley. The air in the whole street is filled with the pungent potion smell mixed with the stench of rotting unknown objects, and the grey signboards on both sides of the street seem to be shimmering. The wizards who came and went on the street were in a hurry. Most of them covered their heads with white bucket hats, so that people could not see their true faces. The few who dared to expose their faces were mostly gloomy. Their ugly and distorted faces made people look it's hard to see directly. The whole street is full of corruption, violence and insidious atmosphere. A figure came and went in a hurry. He was wrapped in a huge turban, with a small and slender figure. Professor Quirrell came to the extra-legal place of the British magic world. It's really a nostalgic taste. Even here is more comfortable than at Hogwarts. Well, it's time to get down to business. Cheer up. Don't have that low-end accident like last time. Behind Professor Quirrell's head, Voldemort said softly, "Yes, Master. There will be no more, I assure you." Professor Quirrell quickly replied, trembling. When Professor Quirrell started to implement the new plan formulated by Voldemort, he came to Knockturn Alley for the first time because his neat wizard robes were so conspicuous that he attracted a lot of greedy eyes. But Professor Quirrell, who had never been in contact with such things, was almost taken away by a black wizard with a killing curse. Fortunately, Voldemort was experienced and forcibly controlled Professor Quirrell's body, and he dodged the curse with a roll fate curse, and then a backhand fierce sapphire burned the dark wizard to ashes. After this incident, Professor Quirrell barely gained a foothold in Knockturn Alley. Professor Quirrell walked around and came to an inconspicuous shop, Birkenberg Magic Store. This shop looked old, with peeling paint decoration and distorted shape. It was hard to compliment. Dingling bell. Professor Quirrell pushed the door directly to enter, and the doorbell behind the door made a crisp sound, echoing non-stop in this store full of all kinds of strange objects. "I thought you wouldn't come. I never thought that the professors at Hogwarts would need the services of dark wizards like us." The owner of the Bock magic shop, Caractobus Bock, suddenly appeared in front of Professor Quirrell, looked at him and said coldly, looking at the bald and sinister man in front of him, Professor Quirrell really didn't know what to do for a while. After all, as an excellent graduate of Hogwarts Ravenclaw College, he really didn't have much experience in dealing with dark wizards. Just state your purpose directly. Don't talk nonsense with these people. The more nervous you are, the more they feel that they have decided on you. Voldemort's voice sounded in Professor Quirrell's heart. Are you ready for what I want? Stop talking nonsense. I want to see the result. Professor Quirrell, who was blessed by Voldemort, calmed down and said, pretending to be calm, come with me. Looking at the calm man in front of him, Mr. Bork curled his lips, said something, and turned to walk deep into the store. Professor Quirrell followed the bald man in front of him, avoided many unknown and terrifying black magic props, walked along the difficult path, and followed the owner to the depths of the store with difficulty. The two came to the door of a small room. The door was a miniature door, less than 1 meter high. Mr. Bork opened the miniature door and made a forward gesture. Professor Quirrell bent down and got into the room with difficulty and suddenly felt enlightened. The room was obviously cast with the infinite extension spell. The interior space was scary, with a length, width and height exceeding 20 meters. There were countless iron cages in the huge space. All dangerous magical animals are imprisoned inside, mainly mountain giant monsters, a few cats such as poisonous leopards, and the bottom and largest cages where a Racranian Ironbelly is imprisoned, largest dragon. Everything you want is here. 200 mountain trolls, 50 poison sac leopards, and a Racranian Ironbelly. Mr. Bork also got in through the small door and said to Professor Quirrell with a smile, of course there is this, the blood of an adult unicorn, guaranteed to be fresh. Speaking of which, Mr. Bork took out 6 bottles of silver white liquid and handed them to Professor Quirrell. Then the other things I want, rage potion, and at least 20 highly skilled dark wizards. Professor Quirrell looked at the bottle in his hand and said with some dissatisfaction, of course I haven't forgotten your request, but you know that just getting these things has already cost me countless galleons, and I used the entire Nocturnally relationship to get these things. So now I ask you to pay me the rest of the money, otherwise, our cooperation will end here, although I don't know, and don't want to know what you want to do. But judging from the things you need, your purpose is definitely not very simple. In order to prevent being implicated by you, I hope you pay the full amount now, and then the things you need will naturally be paid by me after a while. Way to notify you. Mr. Bork said coldly, after all, although this is a big business, you have to spend money if you want to make money. These things plus the follow-up materials he needs. You said he wants to capture the British Ministry of Magic. I believe it myself. Professor Quirrell was very angry because this was different from what he had said. He just wanted to refute when Voldemort's voice came. Give it to him. It's still useful to keep him now. After my plan succeeds, I will make him pay the worst price. But Master, Professor Quirrell still wanted to defend himself, but was interrupted by Voldemort forcefully. There is no time. Although Severus blocked most of the trouble for us, it is obvious that the old man has become suspicious, and we need time to observe that little bastard. Otherwise we may not be able to easily overcome the situation in front of us with you and me. Trouble. Professor Quirrell had no choice but to take out an exquisite golden key from his pocket and handed it to Mr. Bork. This is the key to the Vault of Gringotts. I believe that with your ability, you should be able to take out the gold coins inside. Professor Quirrell said helplessly. Mr. Bork looked at the golden key in Professor Quirrell's hand. The top of the golden key was engraved with a raven pattern. Obviously, this golden key belonged to the famous pure-blood family in England, the Lestrange family. This golden key was given to Voldemort by Bella Lestrange, who was a fan of Voldemort back then. Her weak husband had nothing to do with his wife's act of handing over the key of his own vault to an outsider. The deposit paid for the purchase of these magical animals has already removed 1/4 of the wealth of the Lestrange family, and after paying the final payment, the vault of this ancient pure-blood family is really like a rat going in and seeing it hanged himself. Mr. Bork took the golden key and said coldly, I think that should be enough. Give me another 4 months and you'll get everything you want, I promise. Professor Quirrell nodded, retracted his hand in pain, forced himself not to look at the golden key, turned his head and left. The wealth was originally promised to him by Voldemort, and now it belongs to others. Okay, don't care about those riches. I will give you everything you want after I'm resurrected. Hurry up and plan for the rest of the things you need. This is our only chance. Voldemort continued to flicker. Professor Quirrell got the pie painted by Voldemort, nodded, and continued walking towards the depths of Nocturnalia ahead. Chapter 58 Christmas Interview. 3 days before Christmas, in the corridors of the Great Hall of Hogwarts. Okay, Harry, don't ask any more questions. Professor Snape certainly won't want to steal the treasure from the chamber on the 4th floor. Augustus, who was being questioned by Harry, said helplessly. Since the conversation in the principal's office, Dumbledore had also had a frank exchange with Augustus, but the meaning behind the words, apart from guaranteeing that he would not carry out his plan again, he still hoped to give Harry some opportunities to grow. So Dumbledore's number one tool, Professor Snape, was officially launched, and he was forced to play the role of the villain again, not only destroying all the goodwill he had cultivated with Harry. Moreover, he has become the number one suspect of Harry Potter, and once again embarked on the road of acting as a villain. After finally getting rid of Harry, Augustus came to the auditorium. The reporter of Daily Prophet had been waiting here for a long time, and Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were also waiting here today in their formal attire. Professor McGonagall was wearing a dark green one-piece dress with gold trim, and a wide-brimmed women's hat with two long bird feathers, looking very dignified and serious. Professor Flitwick is wearing a black suit with a white shirt, plus Ravenclaw's unique blue bow tie, and well-groomed short hair, making him look very shrewd and capable. Hermione next to Professor McGonagall was wearing a standard Gryffindor the Wizard uniform. Her hair was obviously well-groomed, but she couldn't hide the tension between her brows. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting. After all, I still have a lot of business to deal with. A polite apology drew the eyes of everyone present to the auditorium. Augustus walked into the auditorium slowly, and everyone's eyes brightened. A dark green shirt with a silver white bow tie, and pure black trousers with a long trench coat embroidered with the Slytherin logo and the Dumbledore family crest designed by Augustus himself. The long pale golden hair is combed into a single ponytail, and the exquisite facial features are matched with the different color pupils with different responses. The whole person looks very capable and handsome, full of unspeakable elegance. Professor McGonagall nodded and signaled Augustus to come over quickly. When Augustus stood still, the reporters of the Daily Prophet hurriedly took photos of the professor and the two students from multiple angles. Professor Snape, who was originally the head of Slytherin and the professor of potions, was also going to attend, but due to a certain old deng's mission, Professor Snape, who was in a bad mood, directly refused the interview. Okay, I'm going to start the official interview. A plump middle-aged woman, twisting her indistinguishable waistline, came from behind the photographer. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Rita Skeeter and I'm a reporter from the Daily Prophet. I have been the most popular reporter of the Daily Prophet many times. I hope we can have a pleasant conversation. The middle-aged woman started the interview by talking to herself. She had a lot of makeup on her face, making her pale, and her thin lips were painted with rich lipstick, which made her look very funny, but from her expression judging from the action, this is not an easy guy to deal with. The interview started soon. Facing Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick, Rita Skeeter just conducted some routine interviews, such as what impact the research results may have on the magical world, what role did it play in. Interviews with Hermione have to be tricky, except for asking her whether her contribution to transfiguration is true, and whether she has a favorite boy in the academy, and her views on Augustus, which are full of gossip and bad taste. It caused Hermione to be flushed all the time during the interview, and she didn't know if she was angry or shy. After interviewing the two professors and Hermione, Rita Skeeter said that she would conduct an exclusive interview with Augustus, so the two professors and Hermione were asked to leave first. Hermione and Professor Flitwick didn't have any opinions. After the interview, they turned and left the auditorium. Professor McGonagall seemed a little hesitant, as the vice principal who manages the school's affairs and deals with the outside world all the year round. Professor McGonagall knows that the reporter in front of him is not someone to provoke. Of course, Professor McGonagall is not worried that Augustus will be overwhelmed. She is afraid that this desperate reporter will anger Augustus. Gauze could be on the verge of becoming a murder scene. Seeing Professor McGonagall's worry, Augustus said with a smile, "Don't worry, Professor McGonagall. After all, Hogwarts is also my school. I guarantee that nothing terrible will happen to the other party." Hearing Augustus' assurance, Professor McGonagall nodded, turned and left the auditorium, but the look on her face showed that she didn't really believe what Augustus said. Seeing that Professor McGonagall finally left, Rita Skeeter immediately opened fire, took out her special automatic recording pen and the special booklet, and began to ask Augustus frantically, "Mr. Augustus Dumbledore, the most talented student at Hogwarts for 100 years, Headmaster Albus Dumbledore is your grandfather, right? I heard that the headmaster has a big prejudice against the Minister of Magic, Mr. Fudge, so at first, Mr. Fudge did not agree with your award of the Merlin Medal. For this reason, you also broke out a series of conflicts with Mr. Minister. I heard that you also released a very terrible black magic." Hearing the few questions asked by the other party, Augustus understood that the other party came prepared. Although almost all the teachers and students in the school saw him when he released Fierce Sapphire that day, Augustus believed that Hogwarts the students mentioned it at most when they corresponded with their families. The conversations between these private individuals should not be inquired by the media. As for the Ministry of Magic, it is even less likely to leak any information. After all, they were the most embarrassing party in that incident. The reporter in front of her is still very capable. She should have her own unique information channel in some respects, so that she can find out what Hogwarts and the Ministry of Magic jointly want to cover up. Principal Dumbledore is my grandfather. As for my life experience, I have nothing to say. This is a personal privacy. Mr. Cornelius Fudge's accident was just a terrible accident. I think you should have a way to verify it with the minister. As for the so-called black magic, I never agree with this decadent concept. Magic is magic. There is no right or wrong in magic. Only the people who use magic have right and wrong. Hearing Augustus's answer, Rita Skeeter was slightly disappointed, but soon she knew what to do, and saw her automatic recording pen crazily writing on the booklet. Augustus quickly saw the words written in the booklet through a simple magic. Augustus Dumbledore is the grandson of Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, but his life experience is mysterious, and he may be the mysterious illegitimate son of the headmaster of Dumbledore. The boy does not deny that he has used powerful magic against the Minister of Magic, Mr. Cornelius Fudge, and he does not believe that there is a distinction between black and white magic, and his moral awareness is shallow. Looking at these words, Augustus couldn't help but twitch his cheeks. If you can make it up, you can make it up. He is indeed a professional lace news reporter. It seems that it is still very necessary to control public opinion. The entry point should start with this guy who claims to be the chief reporter, so Augustus said softly. "Oh, by the way, I remember that my grandfather told Mr. Cornelius Fudge about the letter. I seem to remember that it was placed on the desk in the principal's office. I don't know if you are interested in finding out." Chapter 59 Rita Skeeter, mouthpiece of public opinion. Hearing what Augustus said, Rita Skeeter showed a heart-wrenching expression, but quickly calmed down and said slowly, pretending to be embarrassed, "That's a private letter from the headmaster of Hogwarts and the Minister of Magic. How can we check it? It's illegal." "Well, Mr. Dumbledore, let's end today's interview. Thank you for your support." After speaking, she gave Augustus a smile that she thought was appropriate, put away her quill and pamphlets, greeted the photographers and staff, turned and left. Seeing the coquettish and twisting aunt who was about to leave, Augustus smiled disdainfully. He knew that the person in front of him would not give up this opportunity easily. Augustus called out the Phoenix, and he wanted to stay in the principal's room, waiting for this person to come and throw himself into the net. A burst of fire flashed past Augustus and disappeared in place. In the principal's room of Hogwarts, Principal Dumbledore was not on duty in the principal's office. There were only a group of portraits of former principals discussing something non-stop. A fire ignited, and the figures of Augustus and Heir appeared in the principal's room. The portraits were very excited when they saw Augustus coming, and they all started talking to Augustus. "What's the matter with you, little Mr. Dumbledore? Principal Dumbledore went to the Ministry of Magic today. If you want to find him, you may have to come back tomorrow. That's your phoenix. She is really beautiful, much more beautiful than Dumbledore's old bird." Among them, Principal Phoenix Black seemed the most excited. As the most unlikable principal in the history of Hogwarts, Principal Phoenix favored Augustus very much. He was very happy that Augustus chose Slytherin instead of Gryffindor. Every time he saw Augustus, he discussed with him enthusiastically and then crazily complained about the other graduates of Gryffindor College. The headmaster, trying to prove that genius should come from Slytherin. "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, principals, I have important things to do today, and I want to borrow the principal's office. Can you keep quiet and pretend that you don't know anything?" Augustus gave a slight salute to the portraits, then spoke sincerely and explained the detailed reasons why he came here today. "It should have been done a long time ago. Dumbledore is too weak. If I was still the headmaster, this kind of unscrupulous reporter who spread rumors everywhere without incident, I would tie him hand and foot and throw him into the Forbidden Forest, add food to those magical animals." The principals who heard the ins and outs all seemed very angry, and Principal Phoenix Black was furious and said loudly without hesitation. After venting his anger, Principal Black led the portraits and quietly left the principal's room. Looking at the quiet surroundings, Augustus nodded, waved his wand and cast a disillusionment spell on himself, sat on Dumbledore's chair, quietly waiting for the prey to take the bait. After a while, Augustus finally saw a suspicious ladybug flying through the door of the principal's office, and finally came. The enigma-turned-Ritter Kester seemed very excited. Not only did she gain a lot of dirty information today, but she also got important news from the little Mr. Dumbledore, who was not deeply involved in the world. After wandering around Hogwarts for a while, Ritter Skeeter finally realized that the headmaster was not at school today. Upon hearing the news, she immediately made a decision. "Today, I must go to the headmaster's office to steal those letters. As long as I'm after those letters, I can fully grasp the contradiction between the headmaster of Hogwarts and the Minister of Magic. Even if there is no substance in the letter, I can give full play to my imagination. For example, the news that the Minister of Magic has long requested the assistance of the headmaster of Hogwarts, but it has actually been emptied, is also very interesting." Thinking about it made her so excited that she, who had transformed into a ladybug, could not help but perform fancy flying in the air. Seeing the weird behavior of this ladybug, Augustus couldn't help laughing in the dark. It seemed that the ladybug was still very excited. "I thought I had calculated myself." Ritter Skeeter, transformed into a ladybug, had just landed on the principal's desk and had just turned back into a human body to steal the letter when she heard a young voice. "Look what I saw. An illegal animagus, an unscrupulous reporter sneaked into the headmaster's office at Hogwarts trying to steal important letters. That's big news." The shivering Ritter Skeeter quickly turned her head to look and saw Augustus standing alone behind her, looking at her coldly with those strange colored pupils. Ritter Skeeter secretly yelled that she was not good and quickly turned back into a ladybug, flapping her wings and flying towards the principal's room. "As long as I fly out of the principal's office, the other party doesn't have any conclusive evidence. As long as I kill myself and don't say anything, the other party can't do anything to me." Ritter Skeeter was thinking in her heart, speeding up her wings and rushing towards the principal's outdoor. But before flying a few meters, she heard an emotionless voice from behind. "I dared to lure you here, and you thought of running away. You are too contemptuous of people. Protego Diabolica Fire Shield Body." As Augustus released the spell, the entire principal's room was ignited with a dark blue fire, sealing off all passages including the roof, and the entire principal's room became a flame cage. Feeling the terrifying temperature from fiend fire, Ritter Skeeter knew that she might not be able to escape today, so she had no choice but to change back into a human form. Looking at the handsome young man in front of her, and said with difficulty, "What do you want? Don't kill me. I can do anything for you. I don't want anything. I just want you." Hearing this, Ritter Skeeter was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect that she was nearly 40 years old, but she still had such a fatal attraction to boys. Looking at this handsome young man in front of her, Rita Skeeter couldn't help but feel a little bit moved. Feeling shy, she began to twist her body that she thought was very attractive. Looking at the aunt who was blushing and dancing awkwardly in front of him, Augustus knew that the person in front of him would be wrong, so he said loudly, "Please don't be so narcissistic, ma'am. I want you to be my mouthpiece and my minion. As for your pathetic body, I don't need it. I will give you 30 seconds to think about it." Hearing what Augustus said, Ritaski felt ashamed and embarrassed for a moment, but feeling the terrifying temperature coming from fierce fire behind her, she knew that she had no choice today, so she could only speak with difficulty. "I agree, but what exactly do you want me to do?" Seeing that the person in front of him was so weighty, Augustus nodded with a smile, and then said calmly, "Now you can't play any role, so do what you should do. I will notify you when the time is right. Now extend your arm. After all, as for your moral integrity, it is really hard to compliment. You still need take some insurance measures." Hearing that, Rita Skeeter struggled to stretch out her right arm. It seemed that the harmless young man in front of him could not be simply fooled. He was more powerful than he imagined. Augustus slightly tapped Rita Skeeter's arm with his wand, and the mark of a phoenix flying above the Deathly Hallows appeared on his arm. Looking at the mark that appeared, Augustus, they all nodded and said softly, "As long as you can follow my instructions and complete the task I entrusted to you, then this mark is just an ordinary tattoo. But if you dare to go against my will, the magical energy contained in it will burn your soul to death clean. In the end, you will leave this world safely without any damage to your body, and no one will notice." Ritaski couldn't help shivering when he heard what Augustus said, but he looked at the pattern on his arm and comforted himself. It's not bad, at least it looks much better than the Death Eater mark of the mysterious man. Chapter 60 Ice and Snow World Hogwarts. Seeing the aunt in front of him still admiring the pattern on his arm, Augustus couldn't help but feel a little complacent. His logo is majestic and beautiful. It's not like Voldemort's Death Eater logo. It's so stupid. He himself claims to be a reformer and leader. He will eliminate muggles and purify the blood of the wizarding world so as to lead the magic world to glory again. And in the end he becomes a complete social terrorist. Although Voldemort's ideology is very stinking, it is still a political attitude, but the mark he designed himself does not look like a mark that a political group should use. Isn't this a whole group of black and evil extrajudicial lunatics? Marking is very important. It embodies the awareness and goals of the team, and is an important means to unite people's hearts and gather strength, so your own mark must be good looking. Let others know at a glance that this is a political group that leads everyone to a bright future, not a terrorist organization that smashes, loots, burns, kills, and sets fire all day long. Okay, you can go back. As for the report, you should know how to write it. You need to highlight 2 points. One is my identity as a member of the Dumbledore family, and the other is my age. The achievements can be slightly omitted. Of course, gossip plays are indispensable, such as my mysterious life experience and the story with Mr. Cornelius Fudge, but the scale must be grasped, and sales can be increased, but not too much. Augustus spoke softly, waving his magic wand. The raging fiend fire gradually calmed down, and finally turned into a trace of flames, and disappeared into the air in the principal's office. The entire principal's office returned to its former calm, as if nothing had happened, and even the surrounding walls did not show any traces of blackening. Seeing the changes around him, Ritikistor couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his brow. What a terrifying magical control. The violent fiend fire looked like a loyal hunting dog in his hands. He wants fiend fire to kill the opponent, and this loyal hand will burn the target to ashes. If he wants to control the opponent, this loyal hand will bite the neck of the prey and bring it to the owner without hurting it to the half of the prey's fur. Seeing Rita Skeeter's actions, Augustus knew that this person should not have any unreasonable thoughts now, so he turned and left, and then said silently, "I suggest that you still use your animagus transformation. After all, a lace reporter appears in the Hogwarts principal's office. If someone sees it, it may have a bad influence." Listening to the voice behind her, Rita Skeeter finally woke up from her fear. Looking at the boy's back, she regained her composure and used the animagus to transform into a ladybug and fly away from the principal's office. Augustus, who left the principal's office, seemed very happy, and today he was one step closer to his goal. With Ritter Skeeter as his starting point, he could slowly control the Daily Prophet, the most famous British magician authoritative newspaper, thus turning it into its own mouthpiece. As long as Ritter Skeeter is not an idiot, she should be able to understand her request. She wants to use the most authoritative newspaper in the British magic world to announce it to the entire magic world. I'm a new member of the Dumbledore family, and I will inherit the glory of Albus Dumbledore. The blood of this emerging family has not been cut off, but this family has reborn a young genius. After all, if you want to form a team in the future, relying on the lofty prestige of Headmaster Albus Dumbledore, many things will become a matter of course. After strolling around for a while, Augustus came to the Hogwarts Great Hall. At this time, the auditorium selection was very lively. Professor Flitwick and Hagrid were decorating the auditorium. Professor Flitwick hung ribbons and various trinkets in various places in the auditorium using floating photos. Hagrid struggled to drag a few huge fir trees and place them around the auditorium with great effort. His huge face also became flushed, and he didn't know whether it was from tiredness or the cold. Oh, our genius, Mr. Augustus Dumbledore, your interview is over. If you don't mind, I would like to ask you to help with the layout of the auditorium this time. After all, you are much more creative than us old guys are. Seeing Augustus come to the auditorium, Professor Flitwick said excitedly, he can't wait to see what new ideas this young man has. He is always interested in new ideas and new magic, so full of passion. No problem, Professor, if you don't say it, I would like to get involved too. Well, gentlemen, just read mine now. Hearing Professor Flitwick's words, Augustus bowed gracefully to Professor Flitwick and Hagrid. After all, Augustus felt that the two in front of him were still very appetizing to him, and they were always full of enthusiasm. Passion, unlike many other wizards who always look lifeless. Yanby Augustus waved his own elder wand. Last Halloween, he mainly used the deformation method of the fire element. This Christmas, let's use the water element. Fortunately, Hogwarts is located on the Highlands of Scotland. In the higher latitudes of Scotland in winter, there have been several heavy snowfalls in a row. The entire Hogwarts castle is covered in silver, surrounded by a rich water element. As Augustus's wand fluttered, a large number of snowflakes floated from the outdoors of Hogwarts through the corridors into the interior of the auditorium. They gathered at the top of the auditorium, and then began to arrange and combine quickly, and the four walls of the auditorium quickly rose. Transparent ice ribbons and Baroque style ice sculpture decorations, and crystal clear ice crystal chandeliers on the roof, replaced candles suspended in the air, illuminating the entire auditorium brightly. Augustus looked at it, and felt that some other element were missing, so he continued to wave his wand, and more snowflakes floated into the auditorium, and then ice sculptures symbolizing the four colleges appeared on the open space in front of the long tables of each college. The ice sculpture of the Duets College badge was hung on the top of the principal's seat by Augustus using the levitation technique. Then there are some Christmas element in the Muggle world, gift sculptures made of snowflakes, ice sculptures of toy soldiers with different looks, and elk sleighs, made of ice sculptures pulling Santa Claus flying around the auditorium. It's amazing. You are really the best student I have ever seen. You are so creative and imaginative. Looking at the Hogwarts Great Hall, that had turned into a world of ice and snow, Professor Flitwick was extremely happy. The little man jumped up and down excitedly, and when he saw Augustus finished casting the spell, he hurried to Augustus's room. Beside, praised loudly. Hagrid clapped desperately, and with his applause, came even bigger applause. The snowflakes attracted when Augustus cast a spell just now attracted many students from the corridor to the auditorium. They watched this scene together. A brilliant magic show. After the performance, of course, people should give the warmest applause for this outstanding performance and excellent performers. Augustus gracefully saluted everyone present, and thanked everyone for their applause. Then he walked towards the Slytherin crowd, found Draco, who was flushed with excitement, and said softly, "Okay, the performance is over here. After attending today's dinner, we will leave for your manor tomorrow. Remember not to eat too much at night. Merry Christmas, Mr. Malfoy." "Oh, of course I remember. Don't worry, I have informed my father. He has prepared everything and is waiting for your arrival. By the way, I wish you a Merry Christmas, Mr. Dumbledore." Hearing what Augustus said, Draco quickly responded. After speaking, he and the first-year Slytherin students happily walked into the auditorium to touch and watch the wonderful magical ice sculptures. Augustus smiled, looked at the auditorium that had turned into a world of ice and snow, and said in a low voice, "Merry Christmas, Hogwarts." Chapter 61 Malfoy Manor. The day before Christmas, the morning of Christmas Eve. Malfoy Manor. A heavy snowfall last night covered this gorgeous Baroque-style manor with a white coat. The thick snow covered every corner of the manor, and the once neat and green lawn was also covered with a layer of snow. Only in the gaps can a touch of strong green be seen. "Lucius, this winter is really too cold. You can see that even the pines and cypresses are completely covered by snow, and there is not even a trace of green in the entire courtyard." On the balcony on the second floor of the manor, a tall and strong bald man said helplessly, referring to the snow in the manor. "Alright Lino, I know the Rosier family is having a hard time now, but you have to believe that winter will always pass, and a beautiful spring will eventually come." The man named Lucius responded softly, and then continued to stir the hot cocoa in front of him gracefully with a spoon. Obviously the bald man didn't have that kind of patience now. He opened the glass door in front of him, walked up and down the balcony, and looked at the gate of Malfoy Manor from time to time. "Are you sure he will come today? After all, today is Christmas Eve. Shouldn't he stay with his grandfather?" Lino still asked a little worried. "Don't worry, my son Draco specially sent me a letter last night, asking me to have a distinguished guest come to visit me today, and let me prepare in advance." Seeing Lino's anxious look, Lucius felt a little ridiculous, but he replied calmly, "I hope so." Lino could only comfort himself unconfidently, holding on to the railing of the balcony with both hands, and looking towards the gate of the manor from afar. Looking at the old man's appearance, Lucius Malfoy couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It's God's will that the oldest family of pure-blood wizards in Britain is now worried about whether a child will appear. Back then, the Rosier family was also a well-known magical family in the whole of England and even in the whole of Europe. The status of the main line of the family in France was equivalent to that of the Black family in the UK noble. However, the two patriarchs of the Rosier family were on the wrong side at an important historical turning point. When Grindelwald began to rise in Europe in 1940, as a pure-blood conservative and a staunch wizard supremacist, the Rosier family fell to Grindelwald without any surprise. As a result, only 5 years later, Grindelwald was defeated by Dumbledore in 5, and the main line of the Rosier family in France was brutally purged, and most of the remaining members could only abscond to the Rosier family in England. However, relying on the glory and wealth of their ancestors, the status of the Rosier family in the British pure-blood family is still as stable as Mount Tay. But when the mysterious person rises, the former head of the Rosier family feels that the opportunity has come, and it is time to make a comeback. Unsurprisingly, they all fell to the camp of the mysterious man. As a result, the mysterious man was defeated by a child 11 years ago. After the mysterious man fell, the Rosier family was purged again. The Rosier family can only spend a lot of wealth to clear it, but there are still family members with more than 2 digits who like Azkaban free housing for life. The once glorious pure-blood family basically has only one vacant house now. The shell is gone. So when Lucius Malfoy, relying on the new Quidditch sport and Augustus's new potion, was making a lot of money in the market, Lionel Rosier had no choice but to fight his old face and beg the old man students can bring one of their own. Out of the consideration of risk sharing, Lucius agreed with the other party's idea. Of course, the deeper reason was the Rosier family's extensive contacts in the UK, especially in the European magic circle. Just as Lucius was still lamenting the past years, an abrupt voice reached his ears. Master Draco has returned and brought a distinguished guest. They use the fireplace, and now the two are waiting in the living room." An ugly humanoid creature came to Lucius and said humbly. The fear that could not be concealed was revealed in the two huge eyes. "Okay, Dobby, you can get out. Let the other house elves prepare quickly, and don't neglect today's distinguished guest." Lucius asked in a rather unfriendly tone, then waved his hand and sent the house elf in front of him to leave quickly, then got up and straightened his clothes, combed his long hair, then turned his head to face the house elf on the balcony. Lino said with a smile, "Let's go. It seems that today our guests don't like to enter through the main entrance." After speaking, he turned and left, and Lino also quickly adjusted his appearance and followed Lucius' pace to the living room. In the living room, Draco was happily explaining to Augustus, introducing the luxurious decoration of his home and the long history of this manor. Seeing Draco's excited look, Augustus couldn't refuse anything. He could only follow Draco while listening to his explanation, while admiring the magnificence of Malfoy Manor. The living room of Malfoy Manor is a high-ceilinged traditional aristocratic living room in the Middle Ages. It is decorated with gorgeous Baroque decoration and has a very strong French tradition. In fact, this also proves that Draco is not bragging. After all, England there are inextricably linked with France. "I have kept you waiting, Mr. Augustus Dumbledore. Welcome to my roof, distinguished guest." Just as Augustus was still appreciating the gorgeous decoration and gorgeous oil paintings, a hearty voice interrupted the appreciation process of the two. The two quickly turned their heads and saw a middle-aged handsome guy with platinum hair leading a tall and strong bald man walking towards them. "Father." When Draco saw it, he quickly ran to the handsome middle-aged man, saluted respectfully, and then said respectfully, "Okay, it seems that a little dragon has really grown up. Let's introduce it to your friends." Hearing this, Draco nodded and then solemnly introduced to Augustus, "This is my father, Lucius Malfoy." Next to him, Draco straightened his body and forced a formal introduction with his undignified tone. When he said his father's name, his tone was full of pride, but the man next to the introduction suddenly it stuck. "Hello, Mr. Augustus Dumbledore. My name is Lionel Rosier, and I'm the current head of the Rosier family in England. I was invited by Mr. Malfoy to talk to you about Quidditch and potions business." Seeing that his son stopped suddenly in the middle of the introduction, Lucius also felt a little embarrassed and hurriedly prepared to continue the introduction to Augustus, but it was obvious that Lino had no patience, so he introduced himself first and showed that intention. "Greetings to you, two respected gentlemen. Let me formally introduce my name as Augustus Dumbledore. Let's talk about business later. We both came from Hogwarts and are a little hungry. Let's have a meal first. Breakfast, will you, sir?" Seeing Lucius' embarrassed face, Augustus said quickly, Of course. The distinguished guests come to my roof, and of course they have to prepare delicious food and entertainment. The house elves have already prepared everything. Let's go." Seeing that the young man in front of him gave him a step down, Lucius quickly pushed the boat along, regained the demeanor of the head of the Malfoy family, and warmly greeted everyone to walk into the manor. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62. The talk begins. Everyone followed Lucius Muff around and came to a small room. Augustus looked around and found that this room was a very hidden place in the manor. There is no duplex ceiling and luxurious decoration like other rooms in the manor. There are several rows of glass cabinets neatly placed around the small room of more than 20 square meters, and various documents and letters are densely piled inside. There are no windows around it, and only an ordinary chandelier is hung, lighting the room flickeringly. There is a square table in the middle of the room, and 3 gorgeous stools around it. "Father, shouldn't we go to the restaurant? How did we come here, and why there are only 3 stools here?" Looking at the surrounding environment, Draco said, feeling a little confused. "Okay, Draco, go to your mother. She misses you very much. Mr. Dumbledore will be received by Mr. Lino and I personally, and we will go to the restaurant to find you after we finish talking. Don't worry, we won't snub your friend." Hearing Draco's words, Lucius turned to Draco and said. Hearing this, Draco was a little confused. Looking at the empty table, he still stood there blankly. Seeing the look in his son's eyes, Lucius smiled and waved his hand. An exquisite French breakfast and 2 cups of hot coffee appeared on the square table immediately. Then he turned his head and said to Draco, "Okay, don't worry now. I just want to have breakfast with Mr. Dumbledore. By the way, let's talk about the cooperation. Go to your mother's and help prepare lunch. Don't neglect our distinguished guests." Seeing the exquisite breakfast on the table, Draco nodded, turned and walked towards his own dining room. Looking at the back of his son going away, Lucius breathed a sigh of relief, then made a gesture of please to Augustus and said sincerely, "No way. After all, the purpose of your coming here is also for cooperation, so I can only wrong you to eat in this small room for the time being." Hearing Lucius' explanation, Augustus nodded in approval, then walked to the dining table and began to enjoy this delicious French breakfast. Augustus ate breakfast slowly, with elegant and slow movements, while Lucius and Mr. Lino sat opposite Augustus and began to enjoy the 2 cups of hot coffee. During the meal, Augustus secretly looked at the 2 people in front of him from the corner of his eye. Lucius looked very calm. He slowly stirred the coffee in front of him with a silver spoon with a white peacock, engraved with the Malfoy family logo. Mr. Lino seemed very restless. He directly picked up the steaming coffee and poured it into his mouth. As a result, his face was flushed by the boiling coffee, but he forcibly dared not make a sound because of his face. After more than 30 minutes, Augustus wiped his mouth with a napkin and then spoke slowly. "Mr. Malfoy, let's get into the topic and show me your achievements to prove the necessity of my cooperation with you." Hearing the slightly harsh words of the young man in front of him, Lucius was not angry. Instead, he got up and opened a glass cabinet next to him, took out a file bag and handed it to the young man, and then spoke slowly. "I have to say that you are really a genius. After the reform of Quidditch, it has obviously become more interesting. The audience is very impressed. After more than a month of trial, all the reports are in this file bag." Picking up the document bag in front of him, Augustus slowly opened it and read it carefully. Seeing the action of the young man in front of him, Luce nodded to express his approval, but he still looked very confident. Mr. Lino next to him was still very anxious, and he forcibly poured hot coffee into his mouth again. So much so that Mr. Malfoy had no choice but to ask the house elf to send an ice bucket. Otherwise he was afraid that his old classmate would be admitted to the hospital because of a scalded tongue before he had formally negotiated. "The income is very good, but it is far from what I imagined. I found a problem, Mr. Malfoy. Most of these games are held on informal Quidditch pitches. You don't seem to be involved in formal games." After reading the document carefully, Augustus put down the document and said slowly, "There is no way around this. Since we carried out reforms, the group of insects from the Ministry of Magic have come to ask for bribes every day and have officially included the Quidditch competition under the jurisdiction of the Department of Magical Sports and has actual power. Unlike before, it was just an organizer on the surface, and now they declare that they have jurisdiction over all sports that can be raised, so we can only play in black stadiums. But don't worry, they don't dare to directly copy our reform measures. After all, I still have some connections in this area. At least we can guarantee continuous profitability and huge profits." After listening to the young man's words, Lucius sighed and said quite complacently, obviously he is very satisfied with the results he has achieved so far. Hearing this, Augustus shook his head, took out a file bag from the system space, placed it in front of the 2 of them, and then spoke slowly. "This is the development direction of the new Quidditch movement I have summarized, and some more meaningful rules have been added. We must not be limited to the Black Court, and must develop it into the largest sport in the wizarding world." Lucius and the other 2 took the file bag, took out the files inside, and began to observe carefully. The more they looked, the more surprised they became, and they couldn't help showing a surprised expression on their faces. Looking at the facial expressions of the 2, Augustus knew that they must have ideas. After all, he had referred to the composition of FIFA and the competition arrangements of major leagues. He also added many privately sponsored or organized cups. For a whole year, everyone can watch a wonderful Quidditch game anytime, anywhere, which is undoubtedly subversive. It's a genius idea, but if we want to reach this level, we will definitely need the support of the Ministry of Magic. If this is the case, we may really not make much money. Those greedy vampires will squeeze out all the profits. Putting down the document in his hand, Lucius said slowly. He admits that this is a genius idea that can bring huge profits and powerful influence, but he also knows the greed of the Ministry of Magic officials. They may not have the guts to protect the wizarding world against Voldemort, but they have the guts to make money in the name of protecting the wizarding world. Interfering, trying to get a piece of it. Mr. Lino was very moved. This is the opportunity he wanted to make a lot of money. He must not miss this opportunity, but he also knew that the greed of the officials of the Ministry of Magic would not be profitable if they made a big splash. So think hard about countermeasures in your mind. How much does the Ministry of Magic want? If the price is right, they can share it with them. This matter must be done. I believe the two of you should see the profit and strong influence in it. Looking at the two silent people in front of him, Augustus said firmly. Hearing the firm tone of the boy in front of him, Lucius Malfoy sighed, stood up and took out another file bag from the glass cabinet behind him, and put it on the table. Looking at the confident boy in front of him, Lucius Malfoy decided to let this inexperienced boy experience the dangers of the adult world. Chapter 63 Standing and Earning Money. Pointing to the file bag on the table, Lucius said slowly, "This is a private bill between me and the Ministry of Magic. You can have a look at it. After reading it, I believe you will have a preliminary understanding of the greed of the bugs in the Ministry of Magic." Picking up the document bag on the table, he opened it and took out the documents inside. Augustus began to read carefully. There were only some simple current bills and some Gringotts bills inside. But the more he looked at Augustus, the more surprised he was. The Malfoy family alone imported nearly 10 galleons to the Ministry of Magic for various reasons every year. At this time, at least half of the 10 galleons were transferred to the private accounts of the Minister of Magic and senior officials for various reasons. No wonder the Ministry of Magic never collects taxes like wizards, and has the ability to employ the entire magic world. More than half of the labor force even has spare energy in various sports and cultural activities. It seems that the entire magic world is more conservative than I imagined. Not only is the culture and personal cognition still at the level of the Middle Ages, but even the economic model is the medieval tribute system. The nobles control most of the wealth, and then pay tribute to the Ministry of Magic in exchange for protection. Officials of the Ministry of Magic embezzle part of it, and then distribute the rest as wages to more than half of the workforce in the magic world. After receiving their wages, these people went to spend in the shops invested and operated by the nobles, and then transferred the money back to the nobles. However, because the officials of the Ministry of Magic embezzled a large amount of wealth, they themselves became nobles, pay taxes to the Ministry of Magic and guarantee the rights of other nobles. This is simply a perfect closed loop, but this closed loop looks perfect, but it is very easy to break. As long as there is a problem in one of the processes, the entire closed loop will be like Rupert's tears being pinched by the tail. The seemingly indestructible object exploded to pieces. It seems that I only need to do some economical tricks, such as attracting some nobles to my side so as not to pay taxes to the Ministry of Magic. Then this decadent Ministry of Magic will experience financial constraints and even collapse. Thinking of these, August couldn't help laughing, and he found another way without bloodshed. Seeing the smile of the young man in front of him, Lucius was very puzzled. What's the matter? Can't he read? Looking at such a huge expense, I can still laugh. The child will not have any serious illnesses. Looking at Lucius' puzzled expression, Augustus thought of another aspect. That is why these pure-blood nobles would support terrorists like Voldemort, and they were unwilling to cooperate with the Ministry of Magic. Because in this economic model, the traditional pure-blood nobles who have been famous for a long time pay the most money. Their families have completed the primitive accumulation of wealth as early as thousands of years ago, so they have been paying taxes for a long time party. They pay the most money and efforts, but what they get in exchange is only the nominal security protection of the Ministry of Magic, and this protection is actually not completely safe. When a powerful terrorist like Voldemort appears, the Ministry of Magic will think that it is to protect most of the people. The families were denied special protection on grounds of the safety of civilians. Therefore, these pure-blood families have long been dissatisfied. When Voldemort put forward the slogan of defending the interests of purebloods, no matter how cruel and ideological his methods were, most of these pureblood families fell to Voldemort's side. After all, you stretch out your hand when you ask for money, and you don't care if something happens. Is there such a dark and shameless person in the world? It would be better to fight with Voldemort. If they succeed, they will be heroes. If they fail, they can use their family's powerful influence and wealth to ensure their own safety. At least they will not be killed by the opponent because of fighting against Voldemort. After all, no matter how black the Ministry of Magic is, it only asks for money, and Voldemort is really terrible. But if this situation is changed, Voldemort's violent methods and foul-smelling ideology may no longer have any market. Thinking of this, Augustus smiled even more happily. It seems that this trip was really not in vain, and the harvest was quite fruitful. But looking at Lucius' more puzzled face, Augustus also smiled awkwardly. He smiled, then pretended to be calm and said, "Ahem, well, Mr. Malfoy, I have read these bills. Now can you tell me in detail how you cooperate with the Ministry of Magic? I want to know." Hearing these words, Lucius nodded reluctantly, and then spoke slowly. "Our cooperation with the Ministry of Magic has been going on for a long time. They have to intervene in almost all valuable businesses. The general pattern is like this. If you want to do business in the British magic world, you must first win over the Ministry of Magic to jointly establish a joint venture. With the capital injection from the Ministry of Magic, the public will trust your reputation, and then raise the price of the product under a clever name. After making money, the Ministry of Magic's money will be returned in full, and the profits will be divided into two. Why is it only 7%? Augustus said with some dissatisfaction. After all, the other party took % of the shares without selling anything. Isn't this stealing money? 7% belongs to other people. Whether you can get % depends on the face of the Ministry of Magic. Lucius said helplessly. Whose face? Augustus asked in surprise. Ministry of Magic. It depends on the face of the Ministry of Magic. Lucius replied. I finally came up with such a brilliant idea, which can make some small money. In the end, I have to win over the Ministry of Magic to jointly establish a joint venture, and I have to make a clever name to raise the price. It also depends on the face of the TMD Ministry of Magic, so I can't beg for food on my knees yet, Augustus said angrily. Then if you want to put it this way, doing business in the British magic world is begging on your knees. That's it. How many people want to kneel, but there is no way out. Seeing the angry young man in front of him, Lucius continued with some helplessness. Augustus stood up and scolded the corrupt capitalist society in his heart. He wanted to show the two equally corrupt noblemen in front of him what it means to earn money while standing. Let me ask you, why should I give Cornelius Fudge a little color instead of flattering him like you? I just can't kneel down because of my bad legs. Augustus said loudly, then picked up his file bag and threw it in front of the two, continuing, Can this make money? Can make money. Kneeling Lucius nodded and said. Augustus picked up the file bag, took out his elder wand, and read directly. Protego Diabolica Fire Shield Body. In an instant, the blue fiend fire filled the small room, and the scorching airwaves made it difficult for the two people in front of them to breathe. Seeing the painful expressions of the two, Augustus pointed at the fiend fire in the room and said coldly, This plus this, can you stand up and make money, and tell Cornelius Fudge, and his group of trash, that this project and the rest of the Malfoy family business are all managed by me, Augustus Dumbledore the bullish element are in there. If he dares to share my money, I will burn the British Ministry of Magic to ashes in fiend fire tomorrow. I think many people want to be his minister. After talking about Augustus withdrew his magic, the two people in front of him finally recovered their normal breathing, and began to cough crazily. Lucius looked at Augustus' expression, and finally lost the original contempt, and replaced it with deep fear, and of course that unbearable excitement. It seems that the situation, that the Malfoy family has been paying tribute to the Ministry of Magic after the fall of Voldemort may have some small changes. Okay, gentlemen, let's go and help Mrs. Malfoy prepare lunch. After all, today is Christmas Eve. As for Mr. Lino, I agree with you to join. Please discuss the specific matters with Mr. Malfoy. I think everyone will have this breakfast. Should be full. Augustus ignored the changes in the expressions of the two, but walked out the door talking to himself. After all, as the boss behind the scenes, he should leave the specific issues to them. He came to Malfoy Manor, enjoyed a hearty Christmas lunch. Chapter 64, The Great Lunch. Seeing Augustus's departure, Mr. Lino seemed very anxious. Although he was very surprised by the other party's courage, as well as the terrifying magical talent and strength, his own problem has not been resolved yet. After all, just investing in the new Quidditch movement and Lucius potion business in the British magic world is far from enough for a pure-blood family that is on the verge of collapse. After all, in addition to maintaining a decent life for the family, I also have to find ways to make the family members in Azkaban live a little better, so that I have the opportunity to fish them out in the future. So Mr. Lino walked quickly to the door, wanting to stop Augustus. After all, his family still has extraordinary connections in the European magic world. Mr. Dumbledore, please wait a moment. Before Mr. Lino finished speaking, Lucius patted him on the shoulder and interrupted. Okay, don't call anymore. Mr. Dumbledore has already reserved a lunch menu for us. It depends on whether we can cook a hearty lunch, so that we can all be full. When Mr. Lino turned his head, he saw Lucius pointing his finger at the square table, where the meeting had just been held. There were 2 bottles of medicine and 2 pieces of parchment full of words on the table. This is the lunch that Augustus said to prepare, the samples and detailed formulas of the HP potion and the MP potion. Although Professor Snape had already begun to brew these 2 potions and handed them over to Mr. Lucius Malfoy make a sale. Sales began to take a high-end route, so all the potions were brewed by Professor Snape himself. The price is very high, and the effect is also very good. For the sake of confidentiality, Augustus did not give the formula to Luxius. However, in the past few months, the demand for these 2 potions in the British magic world has approached saturation. Although the European magic world has the desire to buy them, they have not opened up the way. So when he saw the people from the Rosier family appearing here, Augustus immediately decided to hand over these 2 medicines to the 2 people in front of him. You should also know how to cooperate with yourself. Okay, Lino, let's go to the kitchen. Today is Christmas Eve. If you don't prepare well, how can you have a good lunch? I think you should understand what this means. Looking at Lino, who was holding 2 pieces of parchment tightly in both hands, Lucius smiled and said slowly, "Oh, of course. It must be well prepared. I think the dining table should be bigger, so that there will be enough food for everyone to eat. Are you right, Malfoy?" Hearing what Lucius said, Mr. Lino immediately responded. The 2 old foxes looked at each other and smiled, and said nothing at all. But we must wait until next time to discuss specific matters. The most important thing now is to let that distinguished guest have a sumptuous lunch. In the kitchen of Malfoy Manor, Mrs. Narcissa Malfoy and Draco are preparing meals for noon. Although there are house elves, according to tradition, the main meal on the table must be cooked by the host himself to show respect to the guests. It seems that I'm here today. I believe this turkey will be very delicious, Augustus said with a smile, then walked forward and elegantly kissed the back of Mrs. Malfoy's hand, and introduced himself. Augustus Dumbledore, I greet you, my lord. You are the genius at Hogwarts. Draco has been telling me about you at school. Thank you for your care and support in the academy. You and Draco go to the restaurant and wait. Lunch will be soon enough. After talking about Mrs. Narcissa Malfoy, Draco, and Augustus, who were already a little impatient, went to the dining room and continued their work in the kitchen by themselves. In the luxurious restaurant of Malfoy Manor, Draco kept telling Augustus about the history of Malfoy Manor and the glorious past of his family. It seems that Diana Long really felt sincerely for his family pride. Okay, Draco, take a rest. Merry Christmas. This is my present for you. As he spoke, Augustus took out a long package from the system space and placed it on the dining table in front of Draco. Draco was so excited to see the gift and finally scratched his head again and said, "Sorry. I'm sorry, Chief. I didn't expect you to give me a gift today. I have already mailed your gift to our dormitory via owl. I would have given it to you face to face if I knew that." Okay, that's all harmless. I believe you will prepare a very good gift. Now hurry up and open it. I believe you will like it. Augustus shrugged and said indifferently. Hearing this, Draco nodded, turned his attention to the gift itself again, and hurriedly opened the package in front of him with some excitement, and a cool custom-made flying broom appeared in front of Draco. The main body of the broom is made of this year's flagship product Nimbus 2000, but with some customized element. It is engraved with the emblems of the Phoenix and the Deathly Hallows designed by Augustus for himself, and written in gold script. To Mr. Draco Malfoy, Vice President of the Slytherin Society. May the glory of Slytherin be with you forever, Augustus Dumbledore. Seeing that it was the broomstick he had always wanted, Draco was overjoyed, holding the broomstick in one hand, while trying to give Augustus a loving hug. He was interrupted by a yell. Pay attention to your behavior, Draco. This is not how a noble should behave. Mr. Lucius and Mr. Lino also came to the restaurant. Seeing Draco's unreasonable behavior, Lucius immediately scolded. Okay, don't preach anymore, my dear. Ziada Lang is just a little excited. After talking for so long, you should be hungry. Let's prepare lunch. Just when Lucius was about to continue to criticize Draco's behavior, Mrs. Malfoy appeared in time and stopped him, and directly ordered the house elves to start preparing lunch. After all, Mrs. Malfoy was the undisputed one in the manor hostess. Thanks to the joint efforts of Mrs. Malfoy and the house elves, the lunch was very sumptuous. During the meal, Lucius repeatedly told himself that he was already preparing a rich lunch to ensure that everyone present would be full. Mrs. Malfoy and Draco seemed a little puzzled when they heard this sentence, while Augustus nodded and praised today's lunch as very delicious, and he also believes that he can eat even more delicious lunch in the future, so as to say expressed approval of Lucius' behavior. After the last dessert was served, Augustus wiped his mouth gracefully with a napkin, then got up and saluted everyone present and said sincerely, "Thanks to the Malfoy family for their hospitality, but today is Christmas Eve. I think I should also go to accompany my lonely and elderly grandfather. Please forgive me for leaving first." After speaking, Augustus summoned his own phoenix. The phoenix uttered a crisp cry, and after hovering for a week, it landed on Augustus's shoulder. This was the last reassurance he gave to the two of them. Prove yourself as the undisputed heir to Dumbledore with the appearance of the phoenix. A flash of fire flashed, and Augustus disappeared into the flames. After all, he knew in his heart that there was still a lonely soul who needed his comfort in the snow-covered Godric's Hollow. Chapter 65 The Reunion at Night in the Valley. Christmas Eve night. Godric's Hollow. This place is named after the famous wizard Godric Gryffindor. It is a village where muggles and wizards live together. There are many old houses of pure-blood wizards in this place, and many famous people have appeared. For example, the wizard goldsmith Paul Wright created the first golden snitch here. There is a small square in the center of the village, and in the center of the square there is a war memorial-like building. There are several shops, a post office, a bar, and a small church. The stained glass shines like jewels on the opposite side of the square. It can be seen through the glass that the church is brightly lit, and it is obvious that the church is making the necessary preparations for today's festival. Augustus walked slowly on the snow-covered square. The thick snowflakes were trampled by his feet, which was particularly loud on this night, when there was no one on the street for family reunion. Using the Phoenix Augustus to come to the outskirts of Godric's Valley, after paying 10 gold galleons worth of travel expenses, he put this year's Christmas gift, a 100 gold galleon shopping coupon from a pet shop, in Haoyu's Paws Superior. The greedy Tsundere Phoenix reluctantly nodded and left Augustus with a beautiful tail feather, which turned into a ball of fire and disappeared into the night sky. Augustus had no choice but to walk to his destination. By the way, he could enjoy Godric's Hollow on a snowy night. After all, this place is also a legendary place in the Harry Potter stories. Augustus slowly came to the center of the square. The monument in the center was enchanted. When Augustus approached, it began to change. It was no longer an obelisk full of names, but became a statues of 3 people. A man with disheveled hair and glasses, a kind woman with long hair and a beautiful face, and a baby boy sitting in his mother's arms. It seems that this statue was set up to commemorate the Potter family. Augustus continued walking to the vicinity of the chapel and used magic to fly over the church wall and came to the back of the church because Augustus felt a sense of closeness of blood. there came a snow-covered tombstone. Augustus knew that the person buried here should be a person related to him by blood. The snow covered the tombstone and he could not see what was written on it. Augustus waved his hand, the magic dispelled the snowflakes on it, revealing the original appearance of the tombstone. Where the treasure is, so is the heart. Kendra Dumbledore and Ariana Dumbledore are buried here. According to the inscription on the tombstone, it seems that Albus Dumbledore's mother and sister are buried here, that is, his grandmother and aunt by blood. Augustus saw from the corner of his eye a bouquet of violet forget-me-nots fluttering in the cold wind. It seemed that someone had already come to pay a visit. That old bee, who was heartless and laughing all day long, might be alone every year. When everyone is reunited, come here to visit former family members. Augustus didn't like this feeling of sadness and loneliness, so he took out his magic wand and gently waved the tombstone. Lush green grew around the tombstone, and after a while, pink phoenix tails symbolized hope. Orchids bloomed around the tombstone. Instead of bringing a bouquet of flowers here every year to pursue the eternal love and longing that has been buried in the cemetery, it is better to fill the cemetery with flowers that symbolize hope, to pursue future hope and make up for past regrets. I hope you enjoy my Christmas presents. Merry Christmas to my loved ones I have never met, but I have to comfort someone who just came to visit you. Seeing the flowers symbolizing hope fluttering in the wind, Augustus smiled, said softly to the tombstone, then bowed and turned to leave. Walking on the streets of Godric's Hollow, along the way, you can see bright lights in every house on the street. Young ladies are preparing rich feasts, and children are looking forward to the gifts they will receive tomorrow under the Christmas tree. Gifts, the old man and the male hosts are all exchanging their achievements and failures this year, and the smiles on their faces prove that they are full of happiness in life. Seeing the scene along the way, Augustus couldn't help speeding up his pace. Walking alone on the empty street, this fatal loneliness is really uncomfortable. Augustus, who quickened his pace, left a long footprint on the snow-covered street, but the snowflakes falling from the sky quickly covered it up, as if those traces had never appeared before. Finally here, this place is remote enough. Looking at the dilapidated mansion in front of him, he couldn't help sighing, but there was no light coming from the room, as if there was no one in it. But Augustus knew that he would definitely be here today. Without knocking on the door or doing anything else, Augustus directly pushed the door open and walked into the dim room. Augustus directly waved his hand to relight the candles that hadn't burned for a long time. With the appearance of the fire, the room finally lit up, and Augustus soon found a lonely figure sitting by a window of the room. If it is the most beautiful place, where you can see Godric's Hollow through the window in summer, there is a pool and a big tree, although the lake has frozen, and the leaves have all fallen. But I heard that in summer, the whole land is covered with lush green grass, the whole big trees become lush, and the cool wind blows from the lake, which is the most beautiful place in Godric's Valley. What are you looking at? Don't you welcome me? Following Dumbledore's line of sight, Augustus only saw a bleak scene made of ice and snow, so he asked suspiciously, "Oh, it's nothing. I didn't realize you entered my room. How did you find this place? Shouldn't you be in Malfoy Manor?" Dumbledore said apologetically, but what he couldn't explain in his heart was that in the place he just saw, he met the love of his life and changed his original destiny. "Why, do you mean you don't welcome me? I'm a member of the Dumbledore family. Shouldn't I stay with my family at this time? Or I'll go," Augustus said jokingly. Hearing that Dumbledore was rarely silent, he would go back to his family's old house every year, go to the back of the church to pay homage to his sister and mother, and then sit by this window, looking at the place he often dreamed about in his dreams, even if that place is no longer a summer scene. But more than 40 years have passed, and for countless nights, no one has ever pushed the door into this old house, and only I stay here alone every year. Okay, I know you are very touched, so you don't need to express it. Remember to send me some good gifts when you go back to school. Merry Christmas, grandfather. Oh no, it should be Merry Christmas, father. Seeing the old man in front of him remain silent, Augustus knew that the other party was not mentally prepared, but he said it indifferently. After speaking, Augustus came to Dumbledore, handed him a beautifully wrapped gift box, and then turned away. After all, he hadn't eaten dinner yet. It would be unrealistic to hope that this old bee could make a Christmas dinner. I can only do it myself to have enough food and clothing. Looking at the gift box in his hand, Dumbledore couldn't help being stunned, and then he opened the gift box silently. Inside was a pair of exquisite woolen socks, and there was a photo of Dumbledore and Augustus meeting for the first time. At the corner alley, old Tom insisted on taking pictures. The old man and the handsome boy stood on the bustling street. Everything looked so beautiful. Okay, I know you are very touched, but you can't just give nothing. Come and help. Don't you want to go hungry at night? While Dumbledore was still immersed in his thoughts, an impatient voice reached his ear. Hearing this, Dumbledore stood up and smiled, put the gift into his arms, and walked briskly to his kitchen. Chapter 66 Nuremberg Castle. December 1991, 12, Christmas. Austria, Nuremberg Castle. A little old man with white beard and hair standing on the square outside the castle took out his gold pocket watch to check it carefully, then looked at the sky covered by dark clouds, and said something impatiently. Why hasn't it come yet? Could it be that the owl was blown away by the blizzard? What made the little old man wait so much was the owl. Every week Lucas would come to the outside of the castle, waiting for the newspaper Daily Prophet sent from England. After the failure of the great cause of myself and my master in 1945, the master specially ordered British newspapers out of the need to monitor his nemesis, so as to monitor at any time. Today is Christmas, and logically there should be a special holiday supplement, but a snowstorm last night made the little old man worry about whether the owl would get lost because of it. It is still difficult to order British newspapers in Austria. Just as the little old man was still in distress, a tired bird song pierced the silent air, and a strong owl flew wearily over the castle with a long package in hand. The little old man blew a loud whistle to signal the owl's landing position, and the owl also landed very spiritually and slowly beside Lucas. After throwing down the package, he lightly pecked Lucas' shoulder with his beak. The little old man also understood, took out a bag of bird food, and put it on the ground, stroked the owl's back, and said with concern, "Thank you for your hard work, Zarshan. You are a strong man who can travel through wind and snow just like master." The owl called Zarshan flapped its wings quite proudly, landed on the ground, and began to eat by itself. In fact, the little old man has always expressed that he doesn't quite understand his master naming his owl Zarshan. It is clearly a very strong owl, so shouldn't it have a more domineering name? But before he had time to think about it, the little old man immediately picked up the package on the ground and walked towards the interior of the castle. At this time of year, his master would be on the tower, waiting for the newspapers from England. Although I don't know what the master's purpose is, but from the hopeful eyes of the master, it can be seen that he has not given up on his ideal. The little old man with the parcel walked towards the main entrance of the castle. When he came to the main entrance, he looked up at the line above his head. The little old man still couldn't help but read a sentence silently. For the greater good. I have been chanting this sentence since I was 20 years old, and from 1940 to 1991, I have also changed from a handsome German boy to a little old man with white beard and hair. But I have never given up on my ideals. I know that one day my master will come out of this self-imprisoned cage and lead myself and my former companions to reshape the glory that belongs to the saints. Thinking of these little old men, he strengthened his steps and walked up the stairs with light steps towards the interior of the majestic castle. Arriving at the top floor of the entire castle, there is a small room. A tall and straight figure with long white hair stands in front of a huge French window. The cold wind blowing from the window blows his hair wildly. "Master, this is the special Christmas issue of the British Daily Prophet this year. It took a lot of effort in summer to send it across the towering Alps." Looking at the back, the little old man said respectfully, "A difficult task should be rewarded, and I believe you have done it for me, Lucas." The back figure did not turn around, but said calmly, "Of course, but today's newspaper may have some topics that interest you. I heard that your arch rival Albus Dumbledore has a grandson, and I heard that he is an out-and-out genius." The little old man named Lucas looked unusually respectful, and he didn't feel any anger because of the other party's behavior, but said calmly and slightly excitedly, "Who in the entire wizarding world doesn't know that Albus Dumbledore is the deadly enemy of the man in front of him, Gellert Grindelwald, and his master was defeated by that damned guy and ended up imprisoned in this tower. Originally, the Saints wanted to assassinate Albus Dumbledore, but they gave up one after another due to the objection of their master. The Saints could understand that the master wanted to come out of the rivers and lakes and defeat their old opponent head on, so as to make sure that they were the best in the magic world, the identity of a strong wizard. As a result, the Saints have waited and waited for more than 40 years, but their master still has no intention of returning to the arena. Does his master want to compete with Dumbledore for a longer life and use the advantage of lifespan to kill the other party? Although it has been a long time, most of the Saints have not given up on their original ideals. After all, they are different from others. The Saints pursue great ideals. They are people with patterns and dreams, frustration and giving up. As a result, 11 years ago, I heard that there was a guy called Voldemort in England who claimed to be the so-called second generation Dark Lord. The Saints thought that this guy could cause Dumbledore a little trouble, but that trash died in a child in his hands. This is the second generation of the Dark Lord. Just as Lucas was still thinking about the past, a yell brought him back to reality. What? You're sure it's a grandson? It's impossible. How could Dumbledore have a grandson? It's impossible. He wouldn't do such a thing. Lucas saw that his master's face, which had been expressionless all the year round, began to distort a little, and he could see that the other party was very angry. But Lucas didn't understand why he was so angry. Isn't it because the other party has descendants? Isn't this normal? Make mistakes. It may be an illegitimate child or a son born to an illegitimate child. After all, it is normal for this kind of thing to happen after more than 40 years. Lucas explained. Impossible. Dumbledore will never do such a thing. He is not that kind of person. Well, stop talking nonsense with you and give me the newspaper, Lucas. As soon as Lucas finished speaking, Grindelwald retorted loudly and walked directly in front of Lucas, snatching the newspaper. Seeing his master's reaction, Lucas really couldn't figure out why his master cared so much about whether his deadly enemy had offspring. Also, why is the master so sure that Dumbledore will not make the mistakes that all men can make? Grindelwald didn't have time to pay attention to this subordinate who was still thinking about it and directly opened the newspaper in his hand. What greeted his eyes was a huge headline and a photo that occupied half of the page. Shocked. The mysterious member of the Dumbledore family, the most outstanding genius since the founding of Hogwarts. Under the exaggerated title is a high-definition dynamic photo. A tall witch and a man with elf blood who took a little girl and a handsome and extraordinary boy with him. When he saw the appearance of that boy, Grindelwald's heart could no longer be as peaceful as before. It seemed that his efforts were not in vain, and the gear of fate finally turned again. Lucas, get ready. We are leaving this damn place. Fate has finally reached the next crossroads, and now we are going to England. Putting down the newspaper in his hand, Grindelwald said to Lucas calmly. Chapter 67. Hearing the words he wanted to hear the most over the years, Lucas felt his eyes were a little wet, but as a senior saint, after some thinking, Lucas still said sincerely, "You are finally willing to lead us again. Don't worry, Master. The Saints still believe in you and believe that you can lead wizards to a bright future. They were only forced to hide to avoid the persecution of the Ministry of Magic's trash. When the news of your leaving the mountain reaches their ears, they will definitely return to your command. But Master, isn't it a bit too risky to choose the British Ministry of Magic as the first target? After all, Dumbledore is in England. Before the strength is assembled, it would be unwise to confront him head on." Listening to the loyal speech of his subordinates, Grindelwald's old but still very handsome face showed an imperceptible embarrassment. "Of course, I can't tell my opponent my real purpose, so I can only pretend to be angry. Lucas, I have my own plan. I'm going to prepare now. After all, although the Austrian auras are a little useless, they will still come to check every month. Now we can't make a big fuss. We have to covertly and secretly inform others. After we finish our investigation from the UK, we will go to France. At that time, my loyal subordinates should be assembled in France. The great plan will be launched again. This is our inevitable success." Hearing his master's slightly angry words, Lucas didn't feel scared, but was very excited. It seemed that years of waiting had finally come to an end. It seemed that his master had been planning a great plan for so many years. That's right, what is Dumbledore? He is just a huge stumbling block on the road to greatness. If you can't even remove this stumbling block, what about a great and glorious mission? The master must want to investigate Dumbledore first. The reality of strength. Prepare for your next plan. Thinking of this, Lucas said excitedly. It's because I'm too dull. I didn't see your great plan. Master, I'm going to inform other people through secret channels now, for the greater good. Looking at his subordinates who turned away with excitement, Grindelwald knew that he must have thought of something else, but that was not too important. Picking up the newspaper on the ground, Grindelwald carefully observed the giant photo on the front page again. Looking at the handsome boy inside, Grindelwald couldn't help but smiled and said jokingly, "He does look more like you, Albus, but he is obviously more handsome because he inherited my genes. By the way, today is Christmas. It seems that I need to give him a special Christmas gift." England. Godric's hollow Augustus, who had been working all night last night, dragged his tired body to wake up from the bed, rubbed his sore shoulders because of the hard bedboard, opened his eyes, and saw a lot of piles beside the bedpack. "Merry Christmas, Augustus. It seems you are still very popular at school." Holding the steaming hot honey tea, Dumbledore opened the door and walked in. Looking at the packages all over the floor, he couldn't help but joked. If an adult can master some culinary skills, his poor grandson will not have to work hard to prepare Christmas dinner for him. Seeing Dumbledore drinking honey tea happily, Augustus couldn't help complaining. Hearing Augustus's resentful voice, Dumbledore touched his nose with a rare embarrassment on his face. After all, he was never the one who cooked when he was with other people. "When I get along with my younger brother is always cooking. Even when I'm with that person, he is always cooking for myself. So I wanted to show my hand in front of Augustus yesterday, but I almost missed the kitchen. It was blown up." But in order to hide his embarrassment, Dumbledore still pretended to be calm and said, "The most important thing about Christmas dinner is the interaction between relatives. As for whether it is cooked or not, and how it tastes, that is not very important. Oh, that's why you've lived for over 100 years, and can't tell the difference between salt and sugar." Facing the unreasonable words of the old man in front of him, Augustus asked unceremoniously, Okay, let's not discuss this issue anymore. Hurry up and unpack your package." Seeing the other party's answer without giving any face, Dumbledore could only forcefully change the subject. Augustus didn't bother with this problem anymore, and turned around to deal with these packages. Most of the packages were just delivered. It should be noon now, because of his snooze. These packages should be the owls from Hogwarts. Transported here. Most of the packages were sent by classmates, except for a few close friends of Augustus. Almost everyone in Slytherin House sent him packages. It seems that his status in Slytherin House is still very high. Thinking of this, Augustus smiled and quickly began to unpack the package in front of him. Most of the students from Slytherin House sent books and custom-made luxury goods, such as exquisitely carved gold pocket watches, cufflinks set with diamonds, exquisitely crafted and gorgeous bow ties and so on. What Daphne sent was a cake made by herself. The workmanship was exquisite and it had 3 layers. It seemed that this little girl still cared about her very much. What Hermione sent was a big notebook, which was filled with her class notes and research results, and said that Augustus could learn from it at will, but she would definitely draw the final conclusion before Augustus, and published alone, would certainly exceed Augustus' achievement himself. For this kind of little girl's aggressiveness, Augustus expressed his emotional stability. After all, this kind of cultural achievement has no attraction for Augustus. After all, this is just a way for Augustus to gain fame. That's all. Harry sent a golden snitch and thanked Augusto for his help in the letter, but it didn't help much. In order to get rid of Harry's entanglement, Augustus told Harry the truth about the Sorcerer's Stone, hidden in the Chamber of Secrets, and personally wrote a book 100 Ways to Deal with Professor Snape as a Christmas gift to Harry. Ron's most special gift was a bag of cheap candy, plus a box full of animal hair, and he thanked Augustus for giving him a gift, so that he could buy a brand new wand next term. Looking at the box of animal hair, Augustus knew that his goal had been achieved. In Ron's Christmas gift, Augustus specially wrote a letter, which mentioned that he was very interested in Ron's enamel hair. The 10-plus-year-old mouse is very interested and wants to get some of its hairs for magical research. In order to ensure that his goal can be achieved, Augustus gave Ron the most simple gift, a full 100 gold galleons. Augustus believed that for a child who has been wearing his brother's old clothes and using an old wand, he said that this huge sum of money was simply impossible for him to refuse. Just as Augustus was looking at the box of hair and planning his own grand plan in his mind, a rush of knocking on the glass sounded into the room. Why is there still a package? And I have never seen this owl before. Seeing the owl knocking on the window, Augustus said suspiciously, but he still opened the window to let it in, fed it some breadcrumbs, and then took a small owl from its claw pack. Looking at the delivery address on the package, Augustus couldn't help but be taken aback for a moment, and then said doubtfully, "Is this a mistake? How can I have a Christmas present from Austria?" Chapter 68 New Snowball Fight Gamma Play. With doubts, Augustus opened the package in front of him. Inside was a letter and a string of delicate necklaces. Taking out the necklace from the package, Augustus watched it carefully. The necklace is made of very expensive magic mithril, and the whole body exudes a brilliant silver luster. There is a mark hanging from the end of the necklace, a regular triangle with a circle in the middle. A vertical line runs through it. Deathly hallows, who would give such a thing for Christmas? Looking at the familiar sign in front of him, Augustus said doubtfully. When Dumbledore saw the necklace, his expression was disbelief. He couldn't breathe, and he sprayed out the honey tea that he just drank before he could swallow it. Looking at the sticky yellow liquid around him, Augustus looked disgusted. How much honey and white sugar should be added? Look at the liquid on the corner of the table. The father of the father. If there is no use, I need to comfort him every day. I really don't know who is the father and who is the son. With this feeling in mind, Augustus opened the letter, and there was only a short sentence written on the paper. "Merry Christmas to you, my dear son, and look forward to our reunion, for the greater good." Looking at the beautiful cursive characters on the paper and the black lines on Augustus's face, do people in the wizarding world have some serious problems? How often they like to recognize others as their sons? But seeing the last sentence on the paper, Augustus couldn't help repeating it. For the greater good. This sentence is good, and I will use it as a slogan of my business in the future. No, absolutely not. As soon as the voice fell, Dumbledore interrupted forcefully. Augustus turned his head involuntarily and looked at the groggy old man in front of him suspiciously. Dumbledore felt very embarrassed and at the same time couldn't calm down for a long time, so he had to explain. "We'll discuss this matter later. Now I have other things to deal with. Can you go back to Hogwarts Castle by yourself? By the way, this is your Christmas gift. Merry Christmas, children. You must not go to the dark at any time, especially a person with such a powerful force like you. You must not be confused by power, and you must be the master of power." Speaking of which, Dumbledore took out an envelope from his arms and handed it to Augustus. Originally, Dumbledore didn't want to grant this right to Augustus, but today's letter disrupted Dumbledore's plan. It is estimated that, if I don't make any more representations, after Augustus meets that person, I will probably be the father to the end, so I still need to win over him. After receiving the envelope from Dumbledore, after Augustus opened it, there was a piece of parchment inside. It was written that Dumbledore, with the power of the headmaster of Hogwarts, allowed Augustus to be in Hogwarts, create a cross-faculty student organization on campus, and use the 8th floor room of response as the organization's event space, free to Augustus. Looking at the content on the paper, Augustus felt very excited. Over the past year, Augustus has applied to Dumbledore many times, but was rejected every time. Today, this matter finally has a result. It seems that, after I go to the academy, I have things to do. The name, logo, motto, code of conduct, and ultimate goal of the organization must be carefully considered, and this organization will become my own power group after I graduate. Thinking of this, Augustus immediately said excitedly, to become the basis for himself to change the entire magic world. "Thank you so much. I like this gift very much. If you have something to do, hurry up. I'm going back to Hogwarts to deal with my affairs." After speaking, Augustus didn't even look at Dumbledore. who had already spread his hands, ignoring the old man's request for a hug, and directly called out the phoenix. After a burst of flames, Dumbledore was left standing awkwardly with his hands outstretched in the room. It's really rude, and it doesn't understand the emotional needs of an old man at all. Forget it. Forgive him for the sake of him coming to spend Christmas with me, Fox. Dumbledore said to himself resentfully for Augustus' behavior, then called out his phoenix, and left the old house after a burst of fire. On the square of Hogwarts, because of the heavy snow a few days ago, the whole square was full of little wizards playing snowball fights. They ran back and forth tirelessly, and attacked each other with snowballs. Cheers and laughter filled the entire square, but their behavior was too muggle. If Professor McGonagall saw them, they would definitely scold them for not acting like a wizard. When everyone in the square was having fun, a burst of fire appeared on the square, and Augustus teleported to the Hogwarts square through the phoenix. Seeing this miraculous scene, everyone ran to Augustus, and the Weasley twins said to Augustus excitedly, "Is this a phoenix? I didn't expect that. Besides Principal Dumbledore, there are people who own a phoenix. You Dumbledore family are really lucky. Everyone has been talking about it, and many people still want to reach out to touch HOU, but how can this arrogant bird let people touch its noble body, directly flap its huge wings, and turn everyone into a ball of fire, after driving away disappeared in the air?" The scene suddenly fell into a strange embarrassment, and Augustus had no choice but to change the subject. "Ahem, my phoenix is a little bit shy. It doesn't like others to touch it. Oh, by the way, what are you doing, snowball fights? Then, with all due respect, your method is too low, not magical at all." But these words seemed to have the opposite effect, and the Weasley twins blushed even more, and said a little angrily, "Oh, can it be said that the geniuses at Hogwarts even have new ways to fight snowballs?" Looking at the unfriendly eyes of everyone, and hearing the angry tone of the other party, Augustus felt a little embarrassed, but still said disdainfully, "Of course, please don't forget who we are, Mr. Weasley. We are wizards with magic. It's too weak to just smash snow into snowballs and throw them at each other like muggles." After speaking, Augustus didn't wait for them to make any further excuses. He directly took out his bone elder wand, and waved the wand to turn the entire square into the most familiar gun battle map in his previous life, Ash of the Desert. All the snowballs they made were turned into various classic guns, such as AK, M4, USP, and Glock. These guns turned from snowflakes looked brilliant under the sunlight. Augustus directly picked up an AK-47 that was changed from snowflakes, a handsome reverse pull bolt, and shot freely at the sky. The muzzle shot. Seeing such a wonderful magic, everyone directly apologized to Augustus, praised Augustus's ideas warmly, and then asked in detail how to use these things, and how to play the game. Augustus began to explain to them how to play the classic blasting mode of traditional CS. After hearing such a wonderful gamma play, the Weasley twins knelt down on one knee in an exaggerated way and shouted, "Augustus Dumbledore, you are our king, the eternal king of games and the king of pranks. Now let's quickly abandon that damn traditional snowball fight and start a new way of playing." Seeing the excited and cheering expressions of the crowd, Augustus also smiled. It was time to relax, so he made a handsome gesture of pulling the bolt of the AK with his backhand, and said that classic line, "Weapons in place, all there, rush." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, The Battle of Hogwarts. After Augustus demonstrated a few rounds of games, everyone joined the snowflake version of the CS reality show. But after a few games, Augustus was forcibly kicked because he did not abide by the rules of the game and used guns other than those specified out of the game. It's really stingy, isn't it? Just using a big sniper. Are you shooting in bursts or me alone? The KDA is only 140, so it means I fouled. It's really boring. Augustus, who was kicked out of the game, said helplessly. Augustus turned snowflakes into a table and chairs, sat at the junction of the map, and began to collect entry fees and gun rental fees, and of course give them the necessary protective measures. Although some snowflakes turned into bullets and hit people would not hurt very much, but if they hit vulnerable parts such as eyes, it was still very dangerous, so Augustus cast a simple whole body defense spell on them. This spell can protect a person's vulnerable places on the body, and can be used as a scoring measure when he is hit. Augustus set a simple stun spell in the defensive spell. As long as the lower body is shot 6 times, or the upper body is shot 1 times, or the head is shot once, the spell will be triggered, causing the person to fall into a short-term coma, and will automatically wake up after a minute. Just like the death and automatic resurrection in the game, the original intention of Augustus was to make a blast mode map, but due to the large number of participants, it has basically become a team competition. The two main parties are Slytherin College and Gryffindor College, while Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff have established their own teams according to their relationship with other colleges. Rifles, pistols, sniper rifles, smoke bombs, and snow grenades. These weapons and bullets all need to be purchased from Augustus. The price is cheap and the quantity is large, and the amazing consumption also makes Augustus a lot of money. After all, in the last exchange event, these people took tens of thousands of galleons from me. Is my money so easy to earn? You can get it back for me as you earn it. Looking at the galleons piled up on the entire table, Augustus thought viciously. At the scene of the game, the war between Gryffindor and Slytherin is about to start. Gryffindor is captained by the Weasley brothers, and the main members are students from Gryffindor College and Hufflepuff College, mainly armed with AK-47 and other types of assault rifles. On the Slytherin side, the Quidditch team headed by Marcus is the absolute main force. The main members are composed of students from Slytherin College and Ravenclaw College. The weapons they hold are more three-dimensional. There are sniper rifles, a medium and long-range crossfire composed of assault rifles. Seeing that the two sides were ready, Augustus put the gold gallon on the table into the system space, came to the two sides, took out a copper nut, and used magic to speak loudly to the players on both sides. I'm going to toss this coin in the air, and when the coin hits the ground, the game officially begins. After speaking, Augustus took out the copper nut in the center of the entire map, and cast a small magic on the coin. When the coin fell to the ground, the sound of metal collision resounded throughout the map. The game officially started. The students of Gryffindor College roared loudly, and the Weasley brothers even fired at the sky with their AK rifles, shouting Gryffindor is the strongest despicable Slater. Let's die, Lynn. Quite like a bandit. Gryffindor highlighted a word of recklessness, and the only tactic was to charge directly to Slytherin's position, by relying on Hufflepuff's joining, and a large number of people, to implement the Ula charge tactic. Slytherin College seemed much calmer. They quickly deployed snipers in several hidden corners according to their terrain, and assaulters dispersed to various points to implement crossfire cover. As soon as the Gryffindor students rushed to the edge of Slytherin's position, they were called out one by the snipers from Slytherin's side, and more than 10 little badgers were scrapped in an instant. But they also quickly adjusted their tactics, and the Weasley brothers yelled smoke bomb. Immediately, all the remaining team members took out the smoke board from Augustus from their pockets, and threw all their strength towards the position of Slytherin College. For a while, thick smoke rose from the position, sealing off the sniper vision. At this time, the students of Gryffindor College shouted the slogan Gryffindor is the strongest, Slytherin should die, while shooting wildly at Slytherin's position with their assault rifles. The Hufflepuff students acted as meat shields, holding up ice shields turned from snowflakes, holding Glock pistols, facing the hail of bullets from the Slytherin side, and steadily approaching the Slytherin College position. The Slytherin house obviously didn't expect that the opponent would have such tactical preparations, and was caught off guard for a while. The 10 sniper fire points arranged by the opponent lost half in an instant under the frenzied strafing of the opponent. But because of the participation of Ravenclaw College, a cool head played an important role at this time. A Ravenclaw male discipline leader said loudly, "Attack those shields first. Those shields are durable. Focus your firepower to destroy them. All snipers will retreat to the rear to prepare for echelon fire support." Hearing that, the students of Slytherin College quickly made adjustments, concentrated all the remaining assault rifles, aimed at the Hufflepuff holding the shield. It was a fierce firepower output. The snipers withdrew to the rear, and sniped those Gryffindor stormers emerging from the smoke. Looking at the battle scene, Augustus couldn't help sighing. These little wizards really have some brains. It's really good to be able to come up with such a tactic in just a few rounds. The sound of guns in the square quickly disturbed the professors who were still on duty. Professor McGonagall walked out with Professor Flitwick. Looking at the square where bullets were flying and explosions were everywhere, Professor McGonagall felt himself. It was dark in front of my eyes, and I almost couldn't stand still. Professor Flitwick looked very excited. He could see that the little wizards were fully protected, and what they were holding was a magical creation that they had never seen before. So he stepped on his short legs. He quickly ran to Augustus, wanting to ask him about the origin of this magic in detail. Seeing Professor Flitwick's excited appearance, Augustus felt very happy. This is his favorite professor, not because of anything else, but because he always has the greatest passion for the unknown and innovation. Just as Augustus wanted to explain the principles of these magics and the rules of the game, Professor McGonagall forcefully interrupted him. "Mr. Dumbledore, you caused us so much trouble. As soon as you came back, tell them to stop. This game is too dangerous." Hearing this kind of speech, Augustus felt very unhappy, but he had a better solution. He saw that it took out the gold gallon that it had just received from the little wizard from the system space and placed it directly in the McGonagall in front of the professor. These are the deposits paid by the students and the depreciation of the items. There are 1200 galleons in total. I think these are enough to offset the damage they caused. Besides, today is Christmas. Professor, shouldn't we relax? There is a proposal. Today we can be a day of freedom. How about nothing else but for the festival and Jingallion? Professor McGonagall was a little angry when she saw Augustus blatantly bribing her with money, and then thought of the outdated facilities in the school and the broomsticks that hadn't been replaced for many years. Professor McGonagall said reluctantly, "Okay then, but you have to ensure absolute safety, no exception." When Professor McGonagall said these words, Augustus saw Professor Quirrell hurrying past the corridor from the corner of his eyes, and an evil plan came into his mind. After all, Voldemort also needed a special Christmas gift. Chapter 70 Bounty for Professor Quirrell. Professor Quirrell, where are you going? Would you like to play with the students? After all, relax during the rare Christmas holiday. While talking, Augustus blocked the way of Professor Quirrell. "Oh, no, I'm going back to my office, Dumbledore, sir." Seeing Augustus standing in front of him with malicious intentions, Professor Quirrell forced a smile. This little bastard is the biggest stain in his life. Thinking about his miserable experience in the first defense against the dark arts class, Quirrell the professor couldn't help feeling sad. Still playing. Now I can't wait to take out my wand and cast a death curse on the little bastard in front of me. Put away your boring thoughts. It's impossible to beat him with you as a piece of trash. Hurry up. He must be planning to make you look ugly. Voldemort's voice rang in Professor Quirrell's mind. "I'm sorry. I should be going, Mr. Dumbledore. Have a good time." Professor Quirrell said with difficulty that he didn't want to stay here for a moment at this moment, so he couldn't help but quicken his pace and wanted to leave this place of right and wrong. Maybe he hadn't gone a few steps, but Augustus stood in front of him again and said regretfully, "Professor Quirrell, it's really a pity that you didn't come to participate in the game, but Professor, why didn't you wear the Christmas gift I gave you? Don't you like it?" Hearing that, Professor Quirrell's face couldn't help twitching. Thinking of waking up this morning, he found a gift package next to the bed. Professor Quirrell was also very surprised at that time. After all, how popular he is at Hogwarts, Professor Luo is still self-aware. However, when he saw the consignor's name on the package, Professor Quirrell subconsciously wanted to throw the package from the roof, but his strong curiosity drove him to open the package. Professor Quirrell felt very regretful when he opened it. Inside was a set of clothes and a headscarf, but the fabrics used for the clothes and headscarves were really unacceptable. All kinds of huge flowers. Isn't it beautiful? People in the Far East like to use this kind of fabric to make padded jackets very much. What a festive color. Looking at Professor Quirrell's twitching face, Augustus pretended to be very regretful and said, "Okay, Mr. Dumbledore, I'll put it on as soon as I get back. Thank you very much for the Christmas present." Professor Quirrell gritted his teeth and said word by word, "No need, Professor, I have ready-made ones here. It's not easy to change the clothes on the spot. Why don't you change the headscarf first?" After speaking, Augustus took out a large colorful turban from the system space and stretched his sinful hand towards the turban on Professor Quirrell's head. When Augustus's hand just touched the turban, at this moment, Professor Quirrell became very agile, dodged to avoid Augustus' attack, and took out his wand. Oh. Professor Quirrell's wand emitted a red light. Augustus was slammed into the air by the red light and fell hard on the snow in the square. Fortunately, the snow was very thick, and Augustus didn't seem to be injured. "What are you doing? As a professor, you attack a student." Seeing the figure flying out, Professor McGonagall looked very angry and shouted at Professor Quirrell loudly. Many students who had just failed the game and exited the game also surrounded Augustus, looking at Professor Quirrell in surprise. "Bastard, is your brain full of troll snot, and you openly attacked a student in front of everyone?" In Professor Quirrell's mind, Voldemort roared loudly. He never imagined that a student who graduated from Ravenclaw could be so stupid. "I just wanted Professor Quirrell to like my Christmas present, but I never thought that the professor would attack me." Augustus, who fell in the snow, sat up slowly, looked at the classmates and professors around him, pretended to be pitiful and said slowly. Hearing Augustus' answer, everyone present glared at Professor Quirrell. They never expected such a well-intentioned act to be attacked so shamelessly. Seeing that the surrounding emotions have been mobilized almost, Augustus said loudly, "Professor McGonagall has just agreed. Today is a day of freedom. All deductions will no longer exist. Now I'm offering a reward. Whoever can take off Professor Quirrell's turban for me will reward him with 100 gold coins. Guaranteed until he puts on the new clothes and headscarf I sent you." The words of Augustus instantly ignited the emotions of everyone present, and the young wizards began to discuss. After all, although there was an exchange event last time, most of them only exchanged for less than 10 galleons. Now as long as you take off Professor Quirrell's ridiculous turban, you can get a huge sum of 100 galleons, and today Professor McGonagall has agreed that there will be no deduction of points. Professor McGonagall looked at Augustus with a displeased face. It seemed that he was being used by this little bastard again, but thinking about what happened to him today, and his dislike of Professor Quirrell in his heart, Professor McGonagall still acquiesced behavior of the students. Seeing Professor McGonagall's silence and the high spirits of the students, Augustus knew that the time had come. He got up from the snow, took out his Elder Wand, and cast magic on the magic guns in everyone's hands, made some small changes, then shouted loudly, "Now the guns in your hands and the snowballs you fire have the effect of the stun spell. Go and take off Professor Chino's turban, and I will pay him 100 galleons on the spot." Looking at the magic gun in his hand, and then at Professor Quirrell who was still standing still, the students cheered loudly, and the Weir Lightwinds even shouted, "Gun in hand, come with me, take off the turban, and get galleon. Idiot, look at what you've done. Why don't you run to the office and put the damn clothes and headscarves on me?" Looking at Professor Quirrell who was still in a daze, Voldemort couldn't help but roared loudly in his mind. Of course, the students would not let go of this golden opportunity. Assault rifles and sniper rifles, those that fired continuously, and those that could not, all fired snowballs at Professor Quirrell like raindrops. Armor protection. Professor Quirrell, who finally regained his composure, cast the iron armor curse on his whole body to block the flying magic snowball, and then ran to his office desperately. In his heart, he has never been so eager to wear that filthy clothes as he is at this moment. Of course, the students will not let Professor Quirrell go, not to mention that he is not worthy of the professor in the hearts of the students' position, and today there is Professor McGonagall's promise not to deduct points. So no one will be able to help today. Today, Professor Quirrell's ridiculous hood must be taken off. So a group of students took all kinds of guns and shot madly at the escaped Professor Quirrell. Even some little badgers who had just retreated from the game scene were chasing Professor Quirrell frantically with their only remaining pistols. Looking at Professor Quirrell who was being chased by the students, Augustus felt very satisfied. He dared to make small moves under his nose. Today, he did nothing else but disgust Voldemort. Let him know who the real boss is at Hogwarts. Chapter 71. December 1992, one lunchtime. Hogwarts Great Hall. In the Hogwarts Battle Royale that caused a sensation throughout the school, Professor Quirrell took the lead in running into his office and put on the festive scarf and professor uniform given to him by Augustus and declared the end. However, even though almost a week has passed, the discussion about this activity has remained high, and the students who participated in the activity have lamented Professor Quirrell's agility. Many students who have just returned to school are more interested in who is the final winner of the shootout between the four houses. When Draco, who just returned to school, asked this question for the first time at the Slytherin long table, when the problem comes, the students who were still chattering in the entire auditorium just now were all silent, because there was no winner in that battle. At the last moment of the game, almost all the students went to chase Professor Quirrell. By the time Professor Quirrell ran back to the office and the pursuit ended in vain, the gun battle map on the square had been removed by Augustus. Professor McGonagall also asked Augustus to disarm all the magic guns in the hands of all students, and announced that, because you did not catch Professor Quirrell, the game was over. Directly announced that the game was over and all disbanded. However, under Augustus and everyone's arguments, Professor McGonagall agreed that every year Christmas school students can hold an event to celebrate Christmas. Of course, the premise is that absolutely it's safe, and everyone has to pay a certain amount of galleons to offset the depreciation costs of the items. When they first heard that Professor McGonagall agreed to everyone's request, everyone seemed very excited, but after hearing that they asked for money, everyone became less interested and turned their attention to Augustus. Under the eyes of everyone expecting, Augustus had no choice but to agree that each event should be hosted by himself and all the money should be paid in advance by himself. But if he wants to participate in the game, the students still need to pay the entrance fee and management fee. This proposal was quickly approved by everyone. After all, if the game is not attractive enough, then just don't play it by yourself and save a lot of money. But Augustus felt that this was another great business opportunity. He could squeeze out these people's wool at this time of year, and he could make a lot of money. Of course, money is second, gain greater influence. In order to obtain the necessary popularity and mass base for your follow-up organization. Back to the present, when Draco asked this sharp question, everyone was silent for a moment, and both Slytherin and Gryffindor declared loudly that they were the final victory of that duel. This announcement undoubtedly ignited the long-standing conflict between the two colleges again, and the two sides once again had a fierce quarrel outside the auditorium. Of course, in terms of quarrel, the Slytherin snakes have the most advantage. Draco, who has won the true teaching of Professor Snape, sprayed the venom frantically and said in a strange way, "A group of stupid lions and little badgers who don't know how to adapt. What else can you do besides charge without thinking? How can you win the final victory? What do you rely on? Are you stupid enough?" As soon as this remark blew up the audience, even Hufflepuff, who was watching the play, began to confront Slytherin House, and the two sides began to output crazy words across the dining table. As a result, Gryffindor was obviously at a disadvantage, because his dean hadn't taught how to spray people. But how could a reckless Gryffindor be so angry? Ron took out his wand directly, and a spell while Draco, who was still spraying venom, was knocked out. It was like adding a spoonful of cold water to the hot oil pan, which instantly detonated the entire auditorium. The four colleges once again divided the camps into two due to a gunfight. They took out their magic wands and started a battle in the auditorium. Magic melee. Colorful spells were flying in the air, and students were hit by the spells and fell unconscious. Some girls were unfortunately affected by the red-eyed boys, hit by the upside-down golden hook, and hung on the wall of the auditorium. Fortunately, because it is winter and everyone is wearing thick clothes, if it is summer, it will inevitably be spring. The Hufflepuffs, whose own magical power and spell level are not as good as Slytherins, relying on their large numbers, adopted the simplest and most direct method to charge forward against the opponent's spell, and wait until they reached there was a heavy punch in front of the opponent. The students of Slytherin and Ravenclaw had never seen this kind of method before. Many of them couldn't react, and they were beaten on the ground by the students of Hufflepuff. In the entire Hogwarts Great Hall, Screams and screams were heard one after another, and many students grabbed cakes and desserts and threw them at the opposite side. Draco, who was hit by the spell first, also slowly woke up from his coma. Seeing the people who had become one with each other, Draco felt that something was wrong, so he quickly stood up and wanted to run towards the professor's office. The professor on duty today is his own dean. As long as he informs the professor first, Gryffindor can be charged with this mass brawl, and maybe he can even add points for Slytherin. Thinking of this, Draco couldn't help speeding up his pace, but suddenly a black figure with red hair rushed out of the crowd and quickly ran to Draco's side. Before Draco could react, he went up and swept the whole legs plus a set of bastard punches directly knocked Draco out again. Ron, that's not right for you. Harry, who was dressed very charmingly, looked at his friend with a sad face and said resentfully, "What are you afraid of? It's already done like this. This kid must want to complain to that old bat, Snape. I'm also thinking of the academy." Looking at his charming friend, Ron said proudly, trying to win the praise of the lady in front of him. Hearing Ron's speech, Harry felt very speechless. Originally, he wanted to get some information about the Sorcerer's Stone from Professor Snape today, so he deliberately dressed up as a girl. As a result, every time he dressed up as a girl, there are always such and such accidents in wars. But it was also because I was dressed as a girl that I was able to retreat from the melee just now. Otherwise my end would definitely be very miserable. Fractured. The students of Slytherin and Ravenclaw, who had never been trained to fight, were cornered by the students of Gryffindor and Hufflepuff and had to use dangerous spells in desperation. But the Cubs and Badgers, who were already excited, were extremely agile at this time and could only dodge the dangerous spell, which hit the wall of the auditorium and made a loud explosion. At this time, Augustus, who was discussing the research and development of new potions in Professor Snape's office, suddenly heard this huge explosion and said to Professor Snape next to him with some doubts, "What's the matter? Could it be that some students set off fireworks in the school to celebrate New Year's Day?" Hearing this, Professor Snape pouted contemptuously and said a little jokingly, "How could it be possible to set off fireworks at noon? I guess our restless students are up to something." After speaking, Professor Snape left the office and walked towards the auditorium. After all, he is the professor on duty today, so he should be responsible. Of course, if it is something that happened to Gryffindor College, then it is not wrong to deduct a few points can. When they arrived at the auditorium, the scene in front of them almost caused Professor Snape to have a heart attack. The students of Slytherin College were pushed to the ground by the students of Hufflepuff College, screaming and begging for mercy. "What the hell are you up to?" Professor Snape pressed his wand against his neck and shouted loudly with magic. The sound was so loud that even the dust on the wall was shaken off. Chapter 72. An angry shout seemed to press the pause button in the auditorium. Everyone stopped their actions and looked at the source of the sound. After seeing that it was Professor Snape, they all put the crime tools in their hands. "Throw it on the ground. Most of them are cakes and desserts with thick cream. Of course, some ruthless people use metal teacups and fruit plates. The most prominent ones are the light winds." They threw the 2 broken wine bottles on the ground. There were traces of blood on the opening of the wine bottles. It seemed that only the Slytherin prefects who fell in front of them were those 2 wine bottles of victims. The sound of falling metal and shattering glass resounded in the auditorium one after another. Professor Snape looked at the murder weapon all over the floor, and the corners of his eyes couldn't help jumping wildly. Looking up the entire auditorium, except for some Gryffindor students who were cursed and hung from the ceiling, most of them were deformed Slytherin students who fell to the ground and were beaten. Professor Snape's face was flushed. He never expected that there would be such a large-scale brawl at Hogwarts. The key point is that the fight happened immediately, and the Slytherin house even lost the fight. "I never expected that on the first day of the new year, you would send such a valuable New Year's gift to Hogwarts. Such a vicious event has never happened in the school's 1,000-year history. You should hope that you will not be expelled from school. Now get up all of you, and tidy up your dirty appearance. Marcus, come and tell me the ins and outs of this incident," and everyone else stands still and doesn't move. While speaking, Professor Snape lowered the cursed students from the ceiling one by one and asked some students who were not seriously injured to go to Mrs. Pomley. to get some medicine and bandages. Augustus couldn't watch the show and eat melons, so he had to go to help Professor Snape and give simple treatment to some seriously injured students. Of course, Augustus's treatment method is also very special. Due to the nature of his own magic power, Augustus cannot cast the magic spell of peace, so he had to mix the healing spell with the flame spell to treat the students. The effect is also very remarkable. The student who just fell to the ground and moaned in pain immediately jumped up from the ground after the treatment, ran all the way in the entire auditorium, and shouted loudly, but the flame on his body made people wonder whether it was healed or burned. Other students who were slightly injured saw such a significant treatment effect and said that they did not need treatment, and please give this love to those in need. A Slytherin student running wildly in the auditorium like a gorilla stopped shouting after the flames on his body finally dissipated and walked slowly in front of Professor Snape. Seeing himself, a student whose face was already blurred, whose identity could only be discerned by his body shape and the clothes he was wearing, Professor Snape's eyes twitched wildly, but he still calmed down and said quietly, "Okay Marcus, stop yelling like a coward and now tell me who picked it and why you got into this dishonorable brawl." "I'm sorry, Professor, I'm actually not very clear about the cause of this incident. At the beginning, everyone was just communicating with each other in a friendly manner, but because of the result of the last shootout, the two sides quarreled. But you know, Professor, we Slytherins have never do not do things that maliciously attack others. We have always used the most beautiful and appropriate language to reason with each other, but the group of stupid lions in Gryffindor, just because they couldn't speak to us, they beat Draco out with their hands, so the two sides fought." While rubbing his swollen face that had been beaten, Marcus tearfully accused Gryffindor of his lack of martial ethics. "You're talking nonsense. It's clear that you Slytherins started the verbal attack first. You distorted the facts." As soon as Marcus finished speaking, the Weirlight Winds on the Gryffindor side roared loudly. If it wasn't for the classmate next to them to hold the two of them tightly, it is estimated that the two of them would go up and give each other a hard time. "Quiet! Where is Draco? Where is he? Find him quickly. If you are not convinced, I will ask the cause and effect of the matter, but if I know who was the first to do it, I will give him the answer. A full 1 points will be deducted from the college. And he's going to spend a whole year in confinement in the potions classroom, and I'm going to let him handle potion ingredients without gloves for a whole year." After speaking, Professor Snape scanned the audience with his falcon-like eyes. The powerful aura silenced the entire hall, and the faces of the students of Gryffindor College were as white as paper. It seems that this year the Academy is about to finish last in the Academy Cup. Seeing the furious Professor Snape, Augustus couldn't help feeling amused. The fundamental reason why Professor Snape was so angry was because Slytherin College lost in this brawl. Looking at the arrogant Slytherin students, Augustus couldn't help but mourn for them in his heart. They didn't know that, after dealing with Gryffindor, their fate would definitely not be much better. After a few minutes, the students of Slytherin finally found Draco unconscious in the corridor and dragged him to Professor Snape. Looking at the comatose Draco, Professor Snape fully demonstrated the care and love of a godfather at this moment. He did not adopt simple and rude methods of awakening, such as directly pumping with a big mouth, but called out very patiently. The man came over with a glass of cold water and splashed it on Draco's face. Draco, who was awakened by the cold water, obviously didn't understand what was going on. He just kept rubbing his stomach and his bruised left eye, moaning in pain. "Okay, stop making such disgusting gestures. They all said that you were the first student to be knocked out, so please tell me what happened before you were knocked out." Seeing his godson moaning on the ground, Professor Snape pulled him up from the ground, stared at him straightly, and asked word by word. Seeing Professor Snape, who was already face to face with him, Draco didn't dare to neglect anymore, and quickly asked Professor Snape to recount all the process. Of course, he also made some defenses for himself and Slytherin House, such as modifying his tone and language to a certain extent, showing that he is gentle and polite to communicate with the other party in normal language, rather than using Slytherin Littlin's traditional skills, yin and yang language ridicule. It seems that the matter is very clear, Mr. On Weirlie. I never expected that you would have the courage to provoke a fight between the colleges. I didn't expect that your learning ability is average, but your ability to cause trouble is really outstanding. It seems that I need to discuss with your father whether you still need to continue studying at school." When he learned that Gryffindor was the first to attack, Professor Snape's face relaxed a little, and then he immediately activated Slytherin's passive skills and sprayed crazily on Ron, who was identified as a chief offender venom. Ron, who was being ridiculed crazily, had already started to tremble all over his body at this time. Of course, it was not because of Professor Snape's verbal attacks, a passive skill, but thinking that he might be expelled. Even if he was not expelled, he would have to deal with those disgusting potion ingredients in the dark classroom, and even his college would be deducted 200 points. Because of this matter, Ron couldn't help it got scared. Looking at his friends who were trembling constantly, and his classmates who were as hen-faced, Harry sighed deeply, and then tidied up his hair in makeup. Walking out of the crowd slowly, he said softly to Professor Snape, who was still outputting non-stop, "Professor, I have something to say." Chapter 73 Harry, 039, S Intercession and the Strange Professor Snape. Professor Snape, who was talking vigorously, was suddenly interrupted and looked very angry. He suddenly turned his head to look at the source of the voice and conceive the language that needs to be used in the next step in my mind, and want to give a little lesson to the person who can't see the situation clearly. But when he saw the long red hair and emerald green eyes, he swallowed thousands of words, so he could only calm down and speak softly. "Harry, why are you here? This savage brawl didn't hurt you." As soon as this statement came out, the audience fell silent, and everyone present opened their mouths wide and looked at Professor Snape in surprise, as if they had seen Professor Snape for the first day. After more than a minute, the audience was still dead silent. Only sporadic sound of plates falling echoed in the silent environment. When the professor crazily sprayed venom at Gryffindor College, a few little badgers sneaked to the unaffected dining table and secretly entered the cooking mode in the spirit of eating big and big, but Professor Snape's behavior really blinded their eyes, so that the dinner plate they didn't notice it when it landed. Looking at the strange eyes of other colleges, as well as the encouraging eyes of his own college, Harry rubbed his face, strengthened his confidence, and walked towards Professor Snape. "Don't worry, Professor, I'm fine, but I ask the professor to be lenient in dealing with this incident. Although I can't argue that Ron was the first to do it, I believe the professor can judge that this incident cannot be Gryffindor College. Unilateral reasons," Harry said softly, and stared at the other party with his own eyes. "Because I have not yet entered puberty, according to the records in 100 ways to deal with Professor Snape given by Augustus. Try to make your voice as close as possible to girls, and the effect will be better. Of course, the most important point is to look into each other's eyes with your own eyes." Although Harry hasn't really practiced it yet, but now that the situation is urgent, he can only use it at a risk. Hearing Harry's request, Professor Snape instinctively wanted to refuse. After all, this incident was very bad from any point of view, and someone needed to pay for it. The most important thing is that Slytherin College was obviously the loser in this incident, and it lost to its own blood feud, Gryffindor. This is something that Professor Snape absolutely cannot tolerate. Moreover, the silence of everyone present proved that this matter was initiated by people from Gryffindor College. How could such a good opportunity be missed? How could I feel sorry for my conscience without deducting 200 points? I'm so sorry, Harry, I can't. Thinking of this, Professor Snape spoke slowly, but just halfway through his words, he felt a gaze on himself, and when he looked up, he saw Harry's emerald green eyes. Those eyes were so beautiful and clear, and there was a deep pleading in the eyes, which made Professor Snape startled. He just thought about the objection, but he couldn't say the second half of the sentence. "What about your opinion, Harry?" After a short pause, Professor Snape looked at the boy in front of him and said helplessly. As soon as this remark was made, the audience was silent again. The Slytherin students stopped their bandaging work, and all of them opened their mouths and stared at their dean with eyes wide open. Their eyes were full of inconceivable and deep doubts. "Professor, I think both sides of the brawl are responsible, but after all, Gryffindor College is the first party to fight, but can the punishment be reduced? At least not so many points deducted." Looking at the earnest eyes of all the students in this academy, Harry could only bite the bullet and speak slowly in what he thought was the most coquettish tone. As for the conditions, Harry didn't dare to mention too much. After all, it was Ron who made the move first. No matter how much the other party ridiculed him, it would definitely be wrong to do it first. The purpose now can only be to minimize the loss of Gryffindor College. Hearing Harry's speech, Professor Snape was obviously much better looking, and even Augustus, who was next to him, could see a little mirth from the corner of his eyes. Looking at his own dean, whose facial expression was like a roller coaster, Augustus couldn't help complaining crazily in his heart. It is estimated that this old bat has already conceived a quite disgusting scene in his heart. His lovely daughter begged him everywhere for the academy that he made a big mistake, but he still sympathized with his responsibilities and did not make himself embarrassed to cancel the other party. All the punishments are just a thoughtful reminder and a small suggestion. And the next behavior of Professor Snape perfectly confirmed the conjecture in Augustus' mind. Professor Snape said slowly with a calm expression, "What you said is very reasonable. I really didn't think carefully. For your bravery, Gryffindor College will add 20 points." As soon as this remark came out, the whole audience was dead silent, and the students of Slytherin College didn't respond even when their wounds burst. They all stared at their dean, as if they were looking at a monster. Seeing that his behavior had an effect, Harry quickly moved closer to Professor Snape and continued to look at Professor Snape with those eyes. Professor Snape, who was psychologically satisfied, made persistent efforts and continued. "Because both parties are at fault, but in any case, Gryffindor College is the first party to take the main responsibility for this vicious incident. Now 50 points are deducted from Gryffindor College. Perform voluntary labor within this month, and guarantee that such vicious incidents will not happen again." Hearing Professor Snape's speech, the students of Gryffindor College couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. After all, 50 points is really trivial for Gryffindor, and those behind it are even more trivial. The students of Slytherin House were very angry. After all, they had received so many beatings and deducted 50 points from their opponents. "How about 200 points? Don't you love your college anymore, Professor?" Of course, the next words made all the students of Slytherin House shut up. I saw Professor Snape change the subject and speak slowly to the students of Slytherin House. "You are really the worst class I have ever led. I can't imagine that you have lost the competition with Gryffindor House. This is a shame for Slytherin House. All of you who are injured, after returning to the academy, write a review of 5 parchments and hand it over to me the day after tomorrow, and all of you will undergo special magic training in the next month. If you don't do what I want, I'll let you know why they all call me Potions Master." Hearing Professor Snape's cold words, the Slytherin students felt that they had been disappointed in this world and stood there dumbfounded with despairing eyes. And what about the professor's punishment for Ron? Seeing the remarkable results, Harry decided to make persistent efforts to see if he could reduce the punishment of his good brother Ron. After all, although his friend is unreliable, he still needs to get some money after all. Mr. Weasley, he will clean the public toilets of Hogwarts School for a month and write a review of 10 parchments. I hope he will not make such low-level and ridiculous mistakes in the future. Looking at Harry's pleading eyes, Professor Snape said reluctantly, then turned and led the students of Slytherin House to the common room of his own house. Looking at Professor Snape, who had already left, the students in the remaining colleges couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. They all came to Harry's side to praise his behavior. Ron was very excited and went straight up to give him a big hug and a tight hug. "I lived with my good brother." But his actions didn't last long when he heard an angry voice faintly coming from the corridor. "Mr. Weasley, it seems that you are very happy to commit such disrespectful behavior, so your punishment has not changed. You will have to deal with potion materials in the potions classroom for a whole year, and no gloves." Chapter 74 Mobilization before the establishment of an organization. Since that day, Ron has been in a very miserable situation. For 3 days in a row, Professor Snape made him deal with the dead bloated caterpillar. This is an extremely disgusting potion material, shaped like a huge caterpillar, but when it dies, its entire body will start to swell, and it will be filled with a foul-smelling liquid. Generally speaking, this kind of thing is only handled by professionals, because if you accidentally use too much force, the entire caterpillar corpse will explode violently, splashing the foul-smelling liquid everywhere. Professor Snape let him deal with 3 big sacks of swollen caterpillars in a small room, so Ron fully enjoyed a full body bath in a wave of caterpillar liquid in this small space. So much so that for 3 whole days, his whole body exuded an unbearable stench, so that everyone could only keep a respectful distance from him. Walking anywhere, even if he was eating in the auditorium, there was no one within 20 meters around him. Harry was even more unbearable about this matter. After all, he could stay away a little in normal life, but when Ron returned to the dormitory at night, the whole dormitory became unbearable. Even Ron's old mouse would wake up from his usual sluggish state when he smelled this smell and suddenly became vigorous and fierce and escaped from the devil's den with a run-up. Harry had no choice but to ask Augustus for help and wanted to ask why Professor Snape suddenly changed his mind and if there was any way to avoid Ron's punishment. After all, if this continues, maybe Ron is not autistic and Harry will suddenly die in class one day due to lack of sleep. Regarding Harry's question, Augustus also felt very embarrassed. After all, he couldn't speak directly to Harry. Ron made 1,000 mistakes. The only mistake was not being able to give you a hug. You must know that Professor Snape hates Gryffindors taking away what belongs to him. After all, I failed in the last competition, and I lost so thoroughly. Now I finally had a spiritual sustenance, and the people of Gryffindor actually made a move on it again, and in front of my face, there was no Aberdassalt's order to send Ron back to the West is already an expression of Professor Snape's restraint. But looking at Harry's 2 huge dark circles, Augustus thought about it and said seriously, for this problem, there is no better way. You can only go to Professor Snape and tell him that you can't sleep peacefully because of Ron's work. Of course you understand the premise of these, and don't plead for Ron, just explain to Professor Snape from your own perspective. You must remember this. Hearing Augustus's answer, Harry was a little reluctant. After all, as a boy, wearing women's clothes every day was nothing like that, but thinking of the terrible stench, Harry strengthened his confidence and asked Augustus. They all thanked each other and turned to leave. Seeing Harry's leaving back, Augustus could only pray silently in his heart that our Mr. Weasley must not make any excessive movements in front of Professor Snape. This was just a small episode of today, and Augustus didn't pay too much attention to it. He turned and walked towards the Slytherin common room. After all, there are more important things to do today. When I came to the Slytherin lounge, I saw that people from the entire college had already lined up according to their grades. Although the lines were neat, the bandages and band-aids on each of their faces filled the whole line with a sense of humor. Coming to the front of the team, Augustus glanced at the team with his eyes, looking at the little snakes in front of them, most of whose faces were painted, but still maintained a serious expression. Augustus suppressed the emotion of wanting to laugh, pretending to be a serious look. He said seriously, "It's good that you didn't lose your fighting spirit because of a single failure, but when you touch your face, every scar on it is a disgrace to yourself and Slytherin House. You may have countless reasons in your mind to refute me, why we don't want to have an honorless fight with them at all, why we were not prepared, but were suddenly attacked by them and so on. But what I saw was that the students of Slytherin House, who were supposed to represent Hogwarts at the highest level, failed in a competition with other houses. They failed completely. You would think that Gryffindor College has already been punished by our headmaster. They seem to have lost more, but in my opinion, now that they have done something, all words have become pale and powerless. What is the fight for? It's not for any bullshit honor. It's just for one thing, and that is to win this battle. However, you lost. Now you are a group of losers." Augustus's speech echoed throughout the common room. This person's speech placed a cold reality in front of everyone. That is, they lost a battle with Gryffindor College. When they heard Augustus's speech, all the students of Slytherin House fell silent, and almost all of them lowered their heads, and the faces of those who were most injured were even reddened. Looking at the people who bowed their heads in silence, Augustus nodded and continued to speak passionately in that high-pitched voice. "Looking at your actions and behaviors, at least one thing makes me feel relieved. That is, you still know shame, and you don't know how to excuse yourself. This is very good. Only when you understand the shame and remember the shame can you wash away the shame on yourself in the future and regain the glory that belongs to Slytherin. But it takes a lot of effort to wash away the shame instead of doing nothing after understanding the shame. Of course, hard work needs direction and needs the guidance of a stronger person. Now I give you a chance to become stronger. I will set up an organization, and any student who wants to become stronger can join, where you can learn the fullest fighting skills and the most advanced magic. Speaking of this, Augustus paused deliberately and looked at all the students present from the corner of his eye. When most of them heard the news, their faces showed obviously excited expressions. Most of the other students are picking their fingers or turning their heads to look at other students. This is actually a hesitant look, which shows that this organization can make them stronger. For Slytherins who admire strength, fatal attraction. After a basic understanding of the situation, Augustus continued. This organization is not only the best support for you in the school, the best place to learn advanced magic and enjoy campus life, it will also be a great legend that will revolutionize the magic world in the future. Now if you are willing to join, or plan to join, you can go to Mr. Draco Malfoy to get the report after 4 days. Of course, the ugly thing is that the organization only needs elites, so everyone who joins is an informal member. If you want to become an official member, you need to pass my personal assessment. Of course, if you become an official member, I will pass on the magic I have mastered to you without hesitation, and you will become a real strong person. I'll give you 4 days to think about it. After the holidays are over, the students who have made a decision will come to our dormitory to sign up. Now they are all disbanded. After finishing speaking, Augustus ignored the people who were still discussing, walked towards Draco who was still in a daze, grabbed his collar, and led him directly out of the Slytherin common room. After all, there is still a lot of preparatory work to be done before the organization is established. Chapter 75 The First Enrollee. Augustus led Draco with a confused face, wandering through the difficult maze of stairs, and came to a wall on the 8th floor. Looking at the bare wall, Draco, who had woken up from his stupor, looked very puzzled, scratched his head, and finally couldn't help asking Augustus, "Chief, what are we doing here? Shouldn't we prepare the organization you mentioned? And do you really want me to manage this organization?" For Draco's question, Augustus did not answer directly, but continued to say silently in his heart, "I need a venue for my conference activities." After repeating it 3 times, a gorgeous door suddenly appeared on the bare wall just now, patted Draco beside him who was in a dazed state, and the two of them, Augustus, opened the door and walked in. Behind the ornate door is a neat and spacious conference room. A long conference table is placed in the center of the room, which can accommodate more than 40 people for meetings. A total of 6 huge stone pillars stand on both sides of the room, dividing into 4 large areas, each of which has stepped seats, and the 4 areas have enough seats to accommodate more than 200 people. Looking at the surrounding environment, Augustin nodded silently. The layout of this room can basically refer to the layout of the British House of Commons, but it is too simple and does not have solemnity and sanctity. Draco was completely shocked by this scene. He had never heard that there was such a mysterious place in Hogwarts. "Okay Draco, write down what I'm going to say next. This will be the meeting place for our organization. As for the training place, I'll tell you how to get there." Looking at Draco who was still in shock, Augustus said slowly. Hearing this, Draco quickly came back to his senses and took out a small notebook and a recording pen from his pocket. This is a habit he developed as the vice president of the study club, and he always records the leader's requirements. Play any instruction. Seeing Draco's actions, Augustus nodded in satisfaction, and then said seriously, "First of all, a batch of huge hangings must be ordered, and a huge sign will be hung behind the head of the conference table, and organizational hangings will be hung on all 4 weeks of the roof of the room. As for what logo is needed on the organization's curtain, what design and color to use, I will give you the details in a few days. All the stools next to the conference table must be replaced, and all of them must be replaced with stools that are sufficiently ornate and carved with organizational logos, and the chief position must have the most gorgeous and solemn seat. After all these arrangements are completed, go get me a few more crystal chandeliers and hang them above the meeting room. After all, we are a bright and great organization. What's the point of holding meetings in the dark every day? As for the seating arrangement for other members to join in the future, I will also give you the detailed content later. Augustus spoke seriously and then slowly slowed down his speech and took Draco around the room to explain some important parts to him in detail. After more than 30 minutes, Draco closed his notebook, shook his sore arm, and said reluctantly, "Chief, of course I know that you have extraordinary ideals and great ambitions, but isn't it a bit too difficult for me to complete these tasks by myself?" Hearing Draco's somewhat reluctant tone, Augustus smiled, took out a bag and a delicate ring from the system space, turned his head to look at Draco seriously, and said word by word said, "This bag contains some gold galleons, which are used to purchase and pay some necessary labor remuneration. Is this ring?" Mr. Draco Malfoy, as the leader of the Future Saints Association, I formally extend an invitation to you. Are you willing to accept my invitation to become the first official member of the Future Saints Association and serve as the leader of the Saints Association? Where's the vice president? Looking at the ring that Augustus handed over, Draco felt that his breathing became a little difficult since the first time he saw Augustus show that terrible magic. He had already determined in his heart that Augustus would become a more terrifying figure than Voldemort. Like his father back then, he stood on the turning point in the history of the wizarding world. But he never thought that he would have such an important position in Augustus's heart. After all, the first official member to join the association was also the vice president of the organization. What an honor it was. Looking at Augustus's sincere eyes, Draco strengthened his confidence and took the ring from Augustus tremblingly. "Very well, you made a wise choice today. I believe that the glory of the Malfoy family will be revived by you. Now drop a drop of blood on that ring and offer me eternal loyalty." Draco Malfoy Mr. Fu. Draco tremblingly cut a small nick on his finger with his wand. A drop of bright red blood dripped on the ring, and the engraved Phoenix and Deathly Hallows logos on the ring shone brightly. The name of the owner of the ring was immediately engraved on the back of the ring. Draco Malfoy, number 001. Seeing the words engraved on the back of the ring, Draco immediately knelt down on one knee to Augustus and said sincerely, "I, Draco Malfoy, the heir of the Malfoy family, offer my eternal loyalty to you, and I will fight with you for a great ideal, for a greater good." The end of the discourse was what Augustus told him, saying that it was the motto of the organization in the future. Augustus was very satisfied with Malfoy's allegiance, and after helping Draco up, he led him out of the room. When the door of the room of requirement was closed again, Augustus took out the letter of authorization that Dumbledore had given him from his arms, and then injected magic into the letter. The moment the magic power entered, all the words on the letter shone with dazzling light, and the door of the room of requirement also shone with the same light. When the light dissipated, the room of requirement was now under his personal control. After all, Hogwarts Castle was originally a private property. The predecessor here was the Slytherin family castle. When all the blood of the Slytherin family disappeared, the castle theoretically belonged to the headmaster of Hogwarts. This is also the reason why Dumbledore has been unwilling to agree, because he knows that if he signs the power of attorney, then the room of requirement will always be under the personal control of Augustus while he is still in office. When the transfer ceremony was completed, Augustus transferred part of his magical energy to Draco's membership ring, and then said slowly, "In the absence of me attending the meeting or hosting the event, you can use this ring of yours to open the door to the room of response. This is your right alone, so you have worked hard to complete the work I ordered. Of course, loyalty will definitely come. Get rewarded." After speaking, Augustin took out a bottle of golden potion and a thick book from the system space, handed it to Draco on the side, and continued. "This is a magical potion that I refined with a special method. Although it will be painful to drink, it can quickly increase your total magical power. In addition, this book is my summary of combat magic skills and tips. It can quickly improve your magic level. Don't let Draco down. You need to know how many people will be in your position after the organization grows stronger. People covet. The root of power comes from strength. Don't let me down. After listening to what Augustus said, Draco didn't say much, just took the two things silently. But this is what Augustus wanted to see the most. Instead of irresponsible crazy guarantees, it is better to silently efforts are more valuable. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.